Tuesday with our new settings. I been getting so sick and tired of the hiccuping, the hesitation on YouTube and other platforms. I was talking to our friend DeFango, and we put our heads together, and I changed a whole bunch of settings, and I'm very curious to see if it's going to have any effect whatsoever on the stream. So far, so good, but usually the hiccuping, the craziness doesn't start till like what? Usually like half an hour or something. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a notable stressed infrastructure as we talked about before, and even the big boys are lowering and switching settings, resolution, and other forms of streaming just to keep things flowing smoothly. And I noticed that we're still tucked away on the back end, and you might not see the YouTube video where you normally do. Only makes it more important for you to share this video out using the share button. And if you don't know where that is, X out of your live chat and go to the arrow next to it and hit share and go ahead and shoot that out on whatever you got, whatever platform, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, whatnot. And when you're done doing that, you just hit live chat and you're right back in action. That's how we get our numbers back up to where they were before until this little weird subjugation goes away on YouTube's part. Not a
It,
big deal,
it might
but
not actually be a subjugation. I mean, they've admitted pretty much that this virus situation, they are skeleton crew. They've admitted it.
Mhm.
They've actually gone as far as to say that many channels are going to get strikes and other things that don't deserve it, and there's no way to undo
Well,
it
fortunately,
until.
we've had none of that. All we've had is just a lack of straight window access that we normally
Yeah.
have on our front.
Well, today I
So at
got
least
the
so fortunate.
notification. So as soon as we went live, in my email box was the notification. So if you did
That's
sub the channel, you'll get that
that's good.
notification. So
That's good.
it's hit or miss, but we'll see if I have to drop the resolution again like I did for the last three shows. Mm-mm-mm. So,
I'll tell you,
so
man.
why have you interrupted my watching my enjoyment of Scott Adams on Tuesday to do this?
Yeah,
Why am I doing this
exactly.
when I could be watching Scott Adams? Explain that.
You could be watching Scott Adams explain to you why all of the not only the infectious disease experts, but the people who work in actuarial sciences and methodologies and modeling data. You could just we could sit around, I guess, and tell everybody how Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci are fooling Dr. Donald Trump, and these charts are not how you model the pandemic or the current cases of the coronavirus, COVID-19 infectious rate and mortality rates in the United States. I have never seen, well, I'm not going to say I've never seen, but I've rarely seen such rampant idiocy just speckled all over my Twitter feed. It's just awful. It is just like, I'm literally speechless at some of these people. I don't know what's going on. There's a whole subsect of people, and it's the same people every time. It is the same people every time. All of a sudden, Scott Adams knows more than everyone else in the American government complex. All of a sudden, Mike Cernovich knows how to calculate the methodology that goes into charting out this coronavirus impact to the country. All of a sudden, Robert Barnes is an expert on why this is going to just unnecessarily kill our economy for a basic flu, and how we're violating people's rights state by state in order to keep down the curve, which is just all a big scandal, I guess, that Trump has bought into. So I guess Trump is just a mindless moron, Glenn, because he's getting more information than we are. He's getting more information than what's being given out to the American people. So he must be so dumb that he's getting nose led by all these so-called experts, who spent their whole entire life doing this stuff, extrapolating information from Europe in real time, which is actually happening, unless you're a conspiracy theorist and you don't think that's happening either. Yeah, I don't know how to intellectually respond to these people. I think I'm truly at a loss for debating anyone who thinks that Robert Barnes or Scott Adams or Mike Cernovich or anybody else in that vein has any effing clue what they're talking about. I'm at a loss. I'm at a complete loss.
Scott Adams is very influential.
Mm.
I mean, he
Yeah,
can
that
do
does not
his
bode well for
numbers.
us.
His numbers have been going up.
Well, yeah, you notice how he went to twice a day? You notice, when there's blood in the streets, Periscope twice. Is that the new saying? He's always got a product to sell too. Remember his little telehealth thing he was doing before? That's coming back around, and all
Of
he's always
course it
got.
is, because now
Yeah,
everyone is locked in their house. That thing failed
yeah,
first time, so he's trying to trot it out there again.
yep, yep, yep. I mean, who knew that a cartoonist could explain to the infectious disease leaders at the NIH and the CDC and the task force how a chart actually works when it comes to tracking and dealing with the mortality rate potential of the coronavirus. Amazing, amazing that this guy has the ability to do that when, in fact, he does not have the ability to do that. If I had to choose a silver lining in this whole thing, is that they've stopped saying ridiculous lies about the CARES Act that we passed out of the Senate, and maybe not altogether, but for the most part, stop bemoaning and whining about what was probably one of the most successful kill shots in legislative history as far as one-sided partisan victories for us. People don't understand a damn thing that's going on. People really don't understand a damn thing going on. Do you think Scott Adams knows what a special purchase vehicle is? Do you think Scott Adams knows where the Fed Reserve authority starts and the Treasuries begins? Do you think he understands a thing about sequestration and the fact that we suspended it in this bill? Do you think he understands anything about sunset provisions? Does he understand the fact that we have launched a between 2.2 and $6 trillion oversight effort that is completely controlled by the administration? Did she understand any of that? Absolutely not. So, what are you learning tonight by tuning in to a cartoonist? I don't know. I don't. I break down the psychology of how to explain a graph chart or some other form of criticism of Dr. Birx's presentation today. I really don't know. I mean, this is not. It's just not like Glenn and I are not seeking 2.4 thousand live viewers on Periscope. You know why? Because that equals nothing for us at all. It's not a matter of jealousy. That doesn't mean anything to us at all. It's honest to God, I'm flummoxed. I'm befuddled at what people are gravitating to in these dark times. They seem to watch the Trump press conferences and then migrate off to these random Periscope channels to learn about things that are just not true. Just not true.
Yeah, K Brawley, YouTube is ghosting almost all the live streams these days. I'm wondering though, is that, if you don't have anybody on hand to do things, your staff is all gone. which seems incredible to me, being that you would think that Google / YouTube would be able to work everyone remotely, but what the fuck
Yeah.
do I know, right? Oh, okay, so maybe there's some, who knows? But yes, I've noticed that. Usually Defango is always on. That's one of the constants of the universe. Defango is live streaming. And I have to
Mhm.
actually open the YouTube app, find his channel, click on it, and see the live stream that way. There's no other.
I just assumed he quit his streaming because I haven't
No,
been
he's
alerted to any
going.
of his stuff.
Yeah, he's going. He's still doing it. He's still doing it. He's still making it happen. But no one knows he's making it happen because
Boy,
of
I
the
mean,
YouTube notification system.
at this point, I am more interested into talking to people that are coming from that perspective than I am anything else at this point, than just going off ad infinitum on what it is that I know through years of trudging through the system and or spending 7 unnecessary years that I call the trivial pursuit of my collegiate degree. I'm more interested in talking to people that agree with these naysayers, the malcontents that assume that, once again, Glenn, there is treason underfoot.
Well, I
There's
can encapsulate their position, I think, pretty effectively. Um, why should we believe? Here's how I think they would couch it. Why should we blindly believe what's coming out of the government? This is the same government that, wasn't it just like 3 or 4 months ago, said that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in a room that's suicide proof, in a building that's been touted as the most secure building in New York State, if not on the Eastern Seaboard, where nothing bad can happen unless they want it to happen. I'm talking to people too, like my wife and her friends, and there seems to be almost a universal contempt, whether they like Trump or not, for the government, and they feel that this is like the tipping point of the lies. Essentially, that's what I get. That you're asking us to suspend the disbelief in, like, literally, since Trump. See, here's the double-edged sword. Trump comes to the political world and is kind of like a litmus test. He's been exposed. Even my oldest friend, who did not like Donald Trump to the point he would not vote for him, and I've been raking him over the coals for years now, just mercilessly. You know how I am, Adam. Any opportunity I get to rub in his face that so-called conservative, the most self-described super conservative, the one chance you had to vote for change into a conservative, and you couldn't bring yourself to do it because you didn't like his personality.
and you just described most never Trumpers, by the way, too.
Right.
So,
right.
yep.
Well, anyway, now he's converted completely. Right. So he loves Donald Trump, and he's the one, maybe a year ago, remarked to me, the most amazing thing about the president that I couldn't appreciate during the election, but why I'm so excited to vote for him in 2020, is that wherever he goes, he exposes the enemies of this country that up until his appearance on the political scene, we didn't see them. I don't like to rub in, but I do. Well, I saw them. You didn't see them. I've been seeing them since 1982 or whatever. But he made the point to me that there's so many lies that have been glossed over, so much subterfuge since Trump took office, that we now, for the first time as voters, are seeing it openly, because these people are getting sloppy. They hate this guy so much. They hate him so much that they abuse the impeachment process, which is kind of humorous now because, the same people who are wanting to make the point, Donald Trump did nothing in the early days of this crisis, But it's not like the early days of this crisis was 30 years ago, and we have to get the fucking Zapruder film to see, frame by frame analysis. It was 3 months ago. And
Not even.
who was it? Somebody today, was it Posobiec?
I
Maybe
wouldn't
it was
know.
Posobiec. He put up somebody, either it was Posobiec or Carpe or one of those guys. Said, you want to know what your friends, the Democrats, were doing the day that this crisis started? And they showed you remember when the Democrats were marching, smirking? Was that
Yeah. I did a
Posobiec? You did
similar
it?
tweet about Nancy giving the pens out on January
Yeah,
31st
you did the
when
pens,
Trump
but
cut off.
someone showed, you remember the
Yeah,
procession?
someone juxtaposed Nancy Pelosi's tweet. Be sure to tune in as the and watch the
Yeah.
Democrat managers deliver the articles. Yeah, I think that might have been Carp or somebody in
It was
there. Yeah,
one of those guys. And actually made me laugh, which rarely happens looking at Twitter, but I was like, good one. Because if there was any way that it's like childish, man. It's like, I couldn't say those things with a straight face that the Democrats are saying for fear that 99% chance I'm going to get slammed worse than
yep,
whatever points I'm
got it.
going to make, with my
Yeah.
stupidity, right? But they keep going. They're going and going.
But
I don't
but
get
you
it.
need people. You need people besides some random conservative Twitter accounts and maybe Sean Hannity to do it for you.
Yeah.
You were outnumbered grossly. We stupidly allow Jim Acosta to come in there, sit in the front row, and ask all these antagonizing questions when CNN's not even carrying the broadcast of the press briefing live. I mean, it's just insulting, and there's certain things that I just question, but this is not one of them.
Do you think that the who makes the decision ultimately? Who gets to sit in that? Given the situation we're in, whose call is it when Acosta gets to
I
stay
can't
where he
I
sits?
can't tell you because I know that Stephanie Grisham is the press secretary, but you'll never see her. So I don't know. I really don't know. I can't tell you at this
Are you
point.
telling me Donald Trump's press secretary is the same as our treasurer was for a couple of months there, years there, or
Yeah, our treasurer, his
I'm not
first
here to
attorney
play games,
general,
and I'm not
that
here to fuck around.
Shireen
ex
Singh,
treasurer, because we don't need a treasurer anymore because we're no
no
longer
more
a pack.
treasurers.
Okay, just I don't want to confuse people. One of
Shireen saying, I think some people are freaking out because they have a business and that's impeding their reasoning. They're freaking out so much about the lockdown that they be clamoring it's all a hoax. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty clearly people are, concerned about. I think it's on Twitter. It's more or less, the Bill Mitchells of the world freaking out because their GoFundMe's are drying up and, everybody's taking a hit in this financial markets. I get it, but to try to translate that into some kind of selfish policy that 2 million Americans could succumb to whatever it is that's over here, it just surprises me how many people are limited in their intelligence and their ability to discern and extrapolate and use the data in Europe, see where they are now, see where we are now, and where we're going to be in 2 weeks. You know why Trump's face looks like it does. I mean, it's just New York ignored it, and for the large part, Metro Jersey is New York, so of course they're in the same boat. And you look at what California did, and man, that's not something I want to admit. It's not something Glenn wants to admit. Hell, it's not even something like our friends out in California want to admit. But California went nuts and they locked down the entire Bay Area. And then it drifted down to LA and they had like 13 cases and they locked it down. And ever since then, they bent their curve down pretty low so that they have containment for the large part for now, anyway. New York is just like it's a different animal because you don't have the geographical expanse that you do in California. Much easier in California to go walk your dog and be 6 feet away from somebody. Much easier to go to your fancy supermarket in California and not get sick than it is to go downtown to some fucking foreigners grocer outlet, because that's the closest thing to you, so you can get back to your Manhattan apartment. I understand that there's differentials here, but for the most part, I just see just a field, if not a field, an ocean of ignorance, mainly coming from our side, and it just blows my mind on two fronts. I mean, one, they don't understand anything about the bill that we passed. They don't understand anything about what we did to inject some form of executive economic infusion that I've never even heard of before. What we managed to do with that bill gives so much power to the federal government, gives so much power to the Treasury to direct the Federal Reserve to do what it wants to do. It gives so much power to make sure that the markets do not end up in some state of flux that causes a meltdown. And then I get people, seemingly intelligent people, who come up to me, or I guess they don't come up to me anymore because I'm socially distanced. Of course, I'm outside of my house maybe once in 2 weeks, but on Twitter, they'll send me a message that says, "Aren't you concerned about the debt that this bill is going to produce? Aren't you concerned about our deficits and our debt?" And then I realize that I'm gonna have to crack the top off of what we never talk about in America, which is the political lie that is American debt, and that it's a bad thing, and that we pass debt on to our children and grandchildren. All these lies that have been put forth and politicized by the Koch brothers and the Club for Growth people, they're all lies. They've always been lies. These are political tools that we use so that we can chase after social programs and try to curtail spending on programs that are in perpetuity that we don't like, from Democrat bases. But in actuality, I could probably find a couple of economists to back me up on this. Something that you learn in your second year when you're studying economics is that if your assets as a nation greatly outweigh your debt, should it be called in all at once, that is incapable to be passed on to the next generation. Matter of fact, it's incapable to be passed on to you. It's not how the whole system works. And honest to God, if I went into how the whole system works, we'd be here for 2 hours and people would fall asleep. And we tried to talk a little bit of economy with Tim, which I thought was a fascinating, and I got great feedback. But it just, people just want to talk about the sexiest sports car going down the street right now, and that is it real, or is it just a flu, or are deep state people in the NIH and CDC out to screw Trump by tanking his economy? Have they tricked him into believing that this is actually a real disease when it's really just a flu? Oh wow. you know Once you've hit that level, I think you're William Shatner on the plane, right? In the Twilight Zone episode. Once you're looking for that monster on the wing in the stormy night, I don't know that I can tell you that it's not there, because some people are seeing it. And how do I tell them that it's not there when they're seeing
Word
it?
salad.
Because
It
this
makes
is
no
all a
sense.
matter of intellectual and academic debate, unless you look at the dead bodies on the ground in Europe. So it's pretty different, time period as far as the debate on what's going on with political economics and Trump and his reaction and markets. And frankly, I got to take a step back and give credit to Chairman Powell. And we would be in a hell of a bad position right now had Powell not held off Trump for so long. Had he not raised the interest rates when he did, had he not at least unwound $500 billion off the bank's balance sheets when he did, there's a whole lot of stuff that the Fed did to put us in position right now to be very successful over a 3-month period that's going to require a lot of shutdown. So, this is not easy for me to say, but the Chairman Powell was spot on, dead on. And now that action is required, he's not arguing at all. So I've got no problem with him. Thank God he's not Alan Greenspan.
Oh yeah, Alan Greenspan, remember him? There's a guy I don't miss.
Mm-mm. Horsey says I was cynical about the Chi-Com virus earlier. Never. All I said was like, everybody who pretends to know what's going to happen in a virus in China doesn't know what the hell's going to happen. Everybody who, thinks they know what the rate of infection and the R ratio and all that stuff. I was tired of it. I was like, let me know when it's out of China. And then as it went into Europe, it became rather hard to argue with the data. And then when it started to hit our metro regions, I'm not one of those guys that thinks it's a bad idea to flatten a curve, because the quickest way to kill the economy is to have dead people in the gutters. And that's the biggest thing for me. The biggest thing for me is, how do you think you're going to have an economy if there are 100,000 dead people in New York? I mean, it would shut everything down anyway. I don't get it. So that's for the Let It Ride Out crew. You make no sense. Glenn or Adam from Chris from Wisconsin. Will rural real estate end up being worth more? I don't think so, Chris, because in the long term, we count on normal behavior here, which is we got a stable genome in the virus, which means the vaccine should be effective, whether it's in 9 months or 12 months. So I don't think you're looking at any long-term shifting in real estate values, to be honest with you. Might get some good deals in Manhattan, but I don't know about outside of town.
No, he meant the other way around. He's thinking that a lot of people living in New York City now are going to be thinking, you know what? Maybe I need to get out.
No, yeah, I get what he's saying, but what I'm saying is those people probably already have a place to go out, whether it's Florida or, if they want to move out just a little bit, they will. But in general, rural real estate, it's not like this is going to, like the metro is going to get hit in Detroit, it's going to get hit in Chicago, it's going to get hit in Philadelphia. We're gonna experience some spikes, St. Louis and other places, but I don't think that that's going to be like a national trend. I mean, it may be a little bit in the New York area where you can kind of move up north, but then again, New York's north, they're getting hit too. So it's almost like you got to get out of the state if you really fear this ever happening again. In my opinion, no, you look at the vaccine and you just say, screw it, we're gonna get a vaccine. You got to be normal about this. When have we ever had this cyclical thing where we're going to get hammered with the same thing twice in 3 or 4 months? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, you can gamble that it could happen, I guess, but certainly.
See, I got to disagree with you. I think you're earlier railing against what you see as people's irrationality.
Mm-hmm.
You still haven't embraced it, though. That if people are in fact irrational, right, then being rational is something that will maybe twice, like a broken clock, twice a day, it might happen. I can tell you that in the late 70s, when my father pulled us out of Manhattan, I mean, we'd been living there my whole life, but he pulled us out in the 70s in a period that now was derisively called white flight, by those who were left, those who we left behind in New York City. referred to it as white flight. What was it? It's like all of the white people who were the tax base, who had money, the upper middle class, upper class, people who could leave left.
So
Because
you're under the assumption that like 1 million people die, and that would be
no,
the
no, I'm saying that just people being I'm still maintaining, whatever you think of it, that this 2 million number was irresponsible to float so early on by the media, the way they just hit on it, hit on it. Now there's a lot of backpedaling, like, well, it's 2 million seems excessive. The model we use may have some problems. We fixed it. We have new numbers, whatever. But as you and I have found out the hard way, a lie can be spoken or something can be said online in today's world. A retraction can be issued 4 days later, but millions of people remember the lie months later, and a small group will remember the retraction, right?
Nobody ever said 2 million was what we were going to deal with. They said
but
if you
hold
had no
it.
mitigation at all,
Hold
it was going to be
on.
2
Hold
million.
on. Okay, hold on. So it doesn't, what I'm trying to tell you is it doesn't matter anymore. If you ask anyone on the street, they're going to throw around 2 million. I'll give you an example. Some crazy liberal. My wife knows crazy liberals. Practically all of the people she knows are crazy liberals in her business, right? And they're absolutely insane text messaging her, a casual acquaintance, 4, 5, 6 times within the span of 15 minutes. We're all going to die. It's Trump's fault. I read that there are going to be 3 million deaths in the US and it's his fault. Now, where are these numbers coming from? Does it matter if it's true? You see? And so if they believe it, whether it happens or not, just like with white flight, right? Are you going to get murdered? How many people actually got murdered in Central Park during the daytime or got robbed? My cousin did, but how many people actually did? But why did everyone flee? Not because everyone got mugged, probably because people started to think, well, that's what New York is. It's a place to get mugged at 12 noon, on a Saturday afternoon. That's unthinkable.
I guess it depends on your liquidity. Most people who own expensive brownstones or property in neighboring areas of Manhattan or in Manhattan itself, if you have the money to not be able to sell, because if it's that type of market, then your property is
Right.
not going to be worth as much.
But
You probably won't be able
hold
to
on,
sell it.
hold on a second. Wait. But New York City residents, by and large, do not own. It's a city of rentals, right? The people who own, if you own real estate in New York, money is probably not an issue for you. But who do I know that actually owns their place? Very few. Everyone,
Yeah.
roommates,
Okay. Well, then
rental.
where would they move to?
Yeah.
Where would they get the new jobs at?
Well, see there. Okay, so there it is.
Later.
I'm thinking a lot of these young people who are here are just going to move back with their parents in the Midwest. That because that's where they all came from in the 90s. A lot of Midwestern kids for college or whatever came to New York City for an exciting life. And guess what? That exciting life has turned out to be like a terrible sci-fi
That's entirely
movie.
possible. That's entirely possible because we would have a post 9/11 effect of limited business for a while, waitresses, waiters, struggling actors.
Yeah.
You're right. They would have to come home at least for a while because there's no jobs to backstop even a month or two. So that very well could happen. You're right. I think it would be
It's a scary
not a white
thought.
flight. It would be a
No, no, what, dude? White flight is
yeah. We'll call it a
left.
millennial flight.
What I'm saying is I'm old enough to remember how these cycles work. And rationality has nothing to do with it. It's not like 1978, 1977, New York was super dangerous and you got to get your kids out of there because, you'll get stabbed by some, minority person. But suddenly, by 1982, 83, it wasn't an issue anymore. I remember New York in 72. I remember it in 77. I remember it in 82. I remember it in 87. I remember it in 92. I remember it over a period of 30, 40 years. And a lot of it was here. It was a mental thing that people fled.
It may be a valid point if you're looking at the chart that was shown by Dr. Birx today. and you're looking at this like absolute skyrocketing, yet to even approach a peak from New York and New Jersey, and everybody else seems to be able to keep it here. I think that's almost like a no-brainer. I think your point is going to be at least partially coming to fruition, but in all likelihood, by the time they peak out, Boston's going to be on the way up. By the time Jersey levels off, Philadelphia is going to be on the way up. And I'm just sorry to tell everybody that that's the way you get to 150,000 dead people, is because it just goes metro region to metro region. That's just how things work. It works similar in the mid 1600s when the bubonic plague was going around, and it was concentrated in the higher populated areas. And same thing with the Spanish flu. And listen, more people together and more people sick, and but yeah, I think I agree with this stuff, but I think we're out in left field right now when it comes down to nobody floated 2 million people in order to achieve a political objective, I don't think. So that's just my opinion.
I
I
disagree.
think,
I think the media latched on to 2 to 3 million in the first week or
but
two.
that only empowers, yeah, but that don't, that if they did, then they did it incorrectly, because
They
it
did.
empowers the president to enact powerful things like he did.
Well, yes, it
And
does. But I'm not saying that it. Look, I'm
it
not saying it was
misfired.
damaging. I'm saying their intention was to damage. They
Well,
thought that they were going to
because the
be
fact
able.
that we're likely to have 10% of those deaths, and in the meantime, he's going to push his executive powers to the Lincolnian extent that he can. I think if you're right, and the media is on that, it's a short-term infusion, as they say, for their benefit, and a long-term payout for us. So, but you could be right, because every time I try to give the media a little bit of credit for
Yeah.
tactical behavior,
No, I know.
I end up
They.
looking like an idiot,
It's
because
like
they
they're
happen.
like the abusive spouse or something. That every time you think you're over the hump and that they can be trusted, they beat you up again. You get mugged. I just don't. I don't. What's amazing to me about these guys is they will lie to you on Monday. On Tuesday, they will berate you for not believing their lies. And by Friday, they're denying they ever lied or berated you, and will call you mentally unstable for even thinking that they did either of those things. This is happening so quickly, openly.
It really is, but to people at home, it feels like forever, because 15 days was long. 30 days on top of that is 45, which is almost like solitary confinement in prison for a lot of people, the way
Yeah,
we've
for
adjusted
normal
our lives.
people. See, for me, I call that just another normal day. I mean, this has been my life for
Yeah,
15 years now.
it's a
But
little bit tough,
I'll
but
tell you
not,
this,
you
Adam,
know,
there's a lot of people who are going to find out if they have a good marriage in the next couple of weeks, right?
yeah, so far so good. Having a couple cute little kids running around helps diffuse the tension sometimes. But I got to say, I understand a lot of people are going through a lot of different circumstances, and sometimes they're tougher than others, and some people are in dark places and lonely places and broke places, and they're going to lash out. They're going to lash out against um, the Trump protocol of backing up his doctors. But in reality, what people don't understand, there is no Trump shutdown. Trump didn't shut down any particular state. If that were the case, Texas and Florida would be on complete lockdown right now. Texas and Florida are not on complete lockdown right now. So listen, stop blaming Trump. He is merely allowing them to put their protocols forward, and allowing states that want to adopt them and use them as a leverage point to push the limits of the laws in their state. That's what's happening right now. So I mean, this fanatical bullshit, the Robert Barnes lines that we're now squelching rights to assemble and go to church, and violating the First Amendment, and the Second Amendment is being violated. Well, literally, listen, any governor who tried to even call gun shops not essential, it was shot down so fast before it could even be filed in court. Maybe a single incident somewhere, a couple places in the country happens. It's not a prevailing issue for us right now. And of course, people don't understand that everything in the Bill of Rights has, over the last couple of hundred years, earned its way through the court systems, a couple of qualifiers, and there is no unequivocal right in the Constitution without constraint. That goes for first, second, third, fourth, whatever amendment you want to pull. It's just the way it is. For people to
It
act
makes a
like
good
they're,
headline, though. I mean, when you
yeah,
read
of
like
course it does.
the governor is letting out hardened criminals, but making space in the prisons for priests, right? It's awesome. I mean, I'm reading that and I'm like, damn, that's exactly the kind of sauce we need in election year. The problem is you start reading beyond the headline, and it turns out that the guys who are getting stopped are these mega church type people whose idea, my idea of a religious organization is you get maybe 10
Why
or
are they getting
15
together,
people,
Glenn?
right?
Why do they have to get together? The mega churches. What
No,
happens when they don't get together?
but I mean, you say that, but to them, it's like a religious thing, it's spiritual, whatever, and that's their position. But in order for them to get their church together, you've got thousands, maybe 10,000, 20,000 people. And honestly, from a public policy, from like a health policy perspective, if transmission of a virus is what you're trying to stop, you'd be crazy to allow something like that, right? You'd be
Well, let
crazy.
me ask you this. The super churches, like the ones that we're hearing about a lot, and my in-laws, of course, are non-denominational, which I don't like to talk about, but um, non-denominational, whatever you want to call them, they get together. This one particular, when I was dating my wife, I agreed to go to one. They opened up a new church, whatever type of Christian Bible church it was. It was formerly not a used car dealership, but a Volkswagen car dealership. They converted it into a so-called church. Now, granted, when you walk in there, it's just a bunch of chairs set up and a stage and a Christian rock band, not a cross in sight or any religious insignia whatsoever. But the point is, if that roof had been leaking or black mold had been discovered or the plumbing was insufficient or they violated the number of people allowed in there under the fire code, guess what? Guess what happens? You get shut down. Okay? The church itself is not a separate entity protected under the Constitution. You may assemble, but if the state says you're going to assemble outdoors, you're going to assemble outdoors. If you're going to assemble 6 feet apart, you're going to assemble 6 feet apart. There are qualifications to everything.
Sure.
Okay. If not, Glenn and I would both be proud owners of fully automatic weapons that we could spray at hundreds of rounds per second. And unfortunately, I can't, because there's been clarifications made throughout the history of the Second Amendment that disallows certain things. And in some cases, just by executive order, I can't go out and get a bump stock anymore if I want to for an AR-15. So there are clarifications to every part of the. You can't go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire. You can't, because trampled to death comes back on you as a liability. So I can go down for all these reasons and tell you why you do not have an express constitutional right to endanger the lives of others by holding your church ceremonies inside a church confines where you do not respect the guidelines that are put in place by your local, state, or in some cases, federal government. In this express case, it is local and state authority. And as Antonin Scalia said in an opinion, you do not have that right, even when it comes to the right to assemble for your religious beliefs. So stop arguing about it. It's pretty easy. I didn't even bother spending 3 years in law school. I can tell you, it's a stupid argument. So you're going to tell me that the government has to let 500 people into a super church because of their First Amendment rights, but down the street, a shitty old shack that has a roof that's starting to collapse, and the county or state authority comes in and said, everybody got to get out of here. This building is no longer up to code. No one's fighting that. It's the same damn thing, people. It's called public health. Jesus. Whew, man, ain't hard. Ain't hard, people. This ain't hard.
Well, I think one of the lingering issues for places like New York City, they've been encroaching on our civil rights in a very substantial way in the last 40 or 50 years. So much so that to somebody who doesn't live in the New York State area, you wouldn't believe me if I told you how they've shredded our Bill of Rights, right? That said, I completely sympathize with why people are flipping out. Because it's not like an overnight thing. It's not like, oh, I just woke up, what is today, Tuesday? I woke up Sunday and I am outraged. This is like you're seeing like a... Well, right, I'm outraged. Oh, it's Sunday night. I can't believe it. For the first time in my life, I'm pissed that they're arresting this super church guy. Oh, I hate the government, whatever. Now, this is what you're looking at is 10 or 15 years of a slow boil on the...
I can see it all over here, man. We got them all right here. I mean, we got everybody with their... I mean, I it's funny. It's not funny, but it's funny. But you're absolutely right. It's like we took this hodgepodge of issues that pissed us off since like Obama was elected, and we're just throwing them out now.
Let me give a better example. You've been giving some good analogies. Here's a good one. This is what I see happening. So after years of being gaslit, you're being gaslit by your spouse who says there's something wrong with you, that you always suspect me for cheating and not being faithful. There's something wrong with you. And years of the self-torture forced going, you had to go to analysis because there's something wrong with you, and you're making the kids uneasy with all of your accusations. There's something wrong with you. And then you walk in unannounced and she's banging your brother right there in the marital bed. Now, suddenly, put into that perspective, there's going to be like a faucet opened up of all the recriminations. You made me go to analysis. You said that I was imagining this. You made me look foolish. How many Christmases in a row in front of my own goddamn parents that I have a mental problem and I have, issues that they're now spilling into our marriage. I'm affecting our kids. Fuck you. Fuck you. I mean, what would seem like an overreaction, someone is going crazy. You'd say, what? Why is, I mean, look, she's banging your brother. That sucks. Divorce her. Why did you flip out? Well, because you've been under a lot of pressure the last 5 or 10 years. And the pressure needs to come out. And I think there's a lot of people, not so much me, because I left that. That's why I left, right? But if you talked to me 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was really pissed off at the idea that right now in New York City, if I want to stand on the corner and tell people, repent, the end is nigh, I'd say there's a high probability I will be detained, told to leave by the police, and if I don't stop, they will arrest me. This is like the end of First Amendment rights, public association, all of that has been curtailed in the New York City area for 20 years under the guise of zoning. And you need to have, if you're going to be speaking to people publicly on the street, you need to hire the NYPD at some exorbitant cost. When the Planned Parenthood people want to march, they get charged nothing by the police for representation. But if I want to do an anti-abortion march, I'm going to get a bill before we even have the event for $40,000 or $50,000. So, look, I'm already getting worked up, Adam. What I'm trying to say, if you really want to understand the minds of your audience, I think step one is to understand that a lot of the time when they're screaming, it's not because of really what's going on now, because you're right, it doesn't make any sense, right? Why would somebody get all bent out of shape? They can't do their super church when we're trying to flatten some kind of viral load curve, right? That's crazy. But what I'm seeing is pent-up aggravations for 10, 15, 20 years overriding common sense, because it's just that feeling like I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. They're doing it again. They're releasing prisoners and they're arresting this super church guy. It makes a great headline. Did I mention that? I thought I did. It was a fantastic headline. Whether it's true or not, it's a great headline. But don't read too carefully the article, because then the awesomeness of the headline will fade, you know? Because actually it seems kind of crazy that you'd want to have 5 or 10,000 people in a closed off space while all this stuff is going on. That seems
you just killed
unreasonable.
like three or four, maybe even a larger lawsuit by Robert Barnes. So, oops, you're gonna piss off Robert Barnes. No, he's not.
Yeah, but Robert Barnes is going to win either way, right? Because see, but the lawyers they will always win, right? If your marriage self destructs, one of the spouses is going to hire the lawyer. He wins. If the marriage survives all of the various documents the lawyer will charge you for and the supervised visitations of your separation and all that, he wins there too. He's never going to lose. The only way he's going to lose is if we bring back public shunning like we used to have when America really was great.
Which basically almost happened to him during the Covington experiment. But
hey, dude, I tried, man. I tried hard to get him shunned.
A lot
no
of
one
people
listened
came
to me.
down pretty hard on the fact that he was building himself up into something. As a matter of fact, even the Covington kids themselves had to come out and say this guy has nothing to do with anything. But I'm not declaring war on this guy. I just have to know who he is by knowing who Richard is, and he's close with Schweikert and all these guys or whatever. I don't really care.
Larry Schweikert. I've never listened to him, but I hear he does podcasting or something.
I didn't know he did any podcasts, but I mean, people just don't understand a lot of what's going on, and I'm not going to contend that I understand all the issues going on with the virus and all that other stuff. I mean, I can clearly and plainly regurgitate the details that I listen to 18 hours out of a freaking day on this stuff, but it's not gospel, and I'm not gonna put myself out there or something. But what I can clearly tell you is that this notion that Trump has destroyed his economy in order to get through this process is absolutely insane.
I don't think Trump had anything to do. I mean, honestly,
it's not even that. I don't even care if Trump directed the economy to close down.
The economy was destroyed, and then the thing is, look, the economy. I
wouldn't say it was destroyed because destroyed means your infrastructure is gone.
No, okay, you're right. You're right. Well, let's be specific. So the stock market lost 20 some odd % of its value in a matter of two or 3 days. Donald Trump had
over the major 3 indices.
Exactly. Donald Trump had nothing to do with that. There had been no the Trump administration didn't start doing these daily briefings, didn't start trying to explain to people how they were going to flatten the curve and all this other stuff, and Fauci and the rest of them, until well after the stock market, which, by the way, is nothing but the perceptions of an aggregate of people. It's not like the stock market is this box that exists by itself. It's people.
Well, as of the passage of the CARES Act, we actually control the stock market now.
Yeah,
the administration actually can basically trade it as necessary, so the losses are kept at a minimal. And this is what Americans don't want to hear. This is what we are told not to talk about because it gets a little hairy. If Tim was still in here, he'd probably say, yeah, because talking points wise, this doesn't sell well for us on the TV. But what we did is we highly nationalized a portion of our economy. For a time being, a short time being. And the fact that we're not making this a forever program that can be extended beyond Trump's win or loss in November is a very important point of note here. But I'm telling you, Tim's still here. So, and Tim can agree with me or disagree with me. But I'm telling you, we are going to essentially be directing trades on behalf of the economy by virtue of legislation that authorize money expenditures through the Treasury. The Fed themselves are not allowed to participate in this type of activity. So we engage in what are called the special purchase vehicles, and buy the special purchase vehicles and buying up all these muni bonds that are about to freaking collapse are probably the most risky thing that we're going to do. Everything else, we're just buying up collateralized debt off the banks.
Yeah.
We're buying up. I mean, nobody was in. When is that? 2008. This isn't a variable mortgage thing. There's no AIG. Basically, we're going to buy up loans that the banks no longer wants. So, hey, we're going to get into it, and that's what we're going to buy up. We're going to just buy up a lot of collateralized stuff. We're going to open up the repo windows.
I'm
So
glad you're
whatever
pointing
bank
this
wants to get
out
out of this
because I
thing.
don't think a lot of people get it. This thing in 2008 was there was a whole bunch of loans that should never have been made. It was a bunch of unsound lending going on. And we got fucked. The waiter
They were insured by a private entity, AIG, instead of being backed up by the money of the United States Treasury.
but there's a
And what's
reason it
happening
wasn't
now
backed
is the
up.
Treasury is buying
Right.
this stuff.
But I would
The
also
Treasury is
argue
buying.
that the loans that the Treasury is buying are sound.
Well, not even if they aren't sound. The point is, it's going to free up the liquidity at the local level, as we like to say, the banking level. We'll still be able to give out the money
Mm-hmm.
to the people that need it or lend it or whatever, and to prevent these mass foreclosures and all the other stuff like that. But what we're going to get is money back in,
Right.
as far as like what the bill is specifying. The money we're giving big businesses, small businesses, hardly any of it is grant related. It's really in some cases forgivable loans, but in some cases not. We're going to actually get the money back. So, I mean, this whole notion that we're going to bankrupt our economy with what we did with this bill is just unnecessary.
It may be unnecessary, but you got to understand, and I think you would even agree with this, that what was done first by Bush W, and then he did a little, and then the craziness under Obama. Can you understand that the average person who doesn't have time or maybe the inclination to understand economics at the micro or macro level or government fiscal policy is just super worried that this is just more of what fucked us all those years ago?
Well, as far as like supply chain demand disruptions and having too many things produced outside of this country, and at a time like this that we can't get everything that we need and might not be able to recover enough. Yeah, I mean that's clearly an issue, but Trump was way too bullish on this whole repatriating businesses from other countries because it takes so long, and it's an arduous process. And even if we wanted to, it would just cost too much. I mean, people have to understand why things changed, why we lost the business we did, and when the New World Order came into being after NAFTA. Frankly, no one wanted to pay the prices anymore for American labor wage workers. No one wanted to do it. They didn't want to buy a computer or a washing machine, a television that was more expensive than a Japanese model because it was cheaper over there. And eventually China, they made cheaper products because their wages were cheaper and their currency was lower than ours. So, I mean, like I said,
You've said this before, but I just want to remind you that a decision was made to allow these cheap goods to flood into the United States without slapping a tariff on it, thus creating, right, but it created a new economy for us that now it's like, dude, if I've been, like, you remember Hitler, right? That his doctor was slipping uppers into his vitamin mix every morning. It gets to the point where can we tell the people that we've been slipping this cocaine into their vitamins, and that's why they feel so great all the time? One, and two,
I think this is the time that we're doing it. I think this is exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If you're feeling pretty great, it's because some barbiturates were supplied or whatever the hell. I'm just saying that there's all kinds of things. Big Ralph asking about the SBA loans to your local banks. Yeah, if you have a small business, less than 500, you got to contact your bank and then just say, are you a member of the SBA loan chain that's coming out here? They say yes or no. The best way to do it is call your bank first. Don't bother the SBA until your bank says there's nothing I can do to help you. And then we're talking about like $10,000 loans for small businesses coming out within like
And this
48,
is
70.
that attached to the recent bill that was signed by the
Yeah,
president. So is the? I mean,
yeah,
I'm glad I would. This is something I've been thinking about to ask you. So let's say I had a business that's been impacted because no one's coming. My state has told me I gotta, like, let's say I own that wine shop with the hard liquor that you can't go to anymore. Um, so I'm sitting there. I have my coveted Pennsylvania certificate right to sell hard spirits or whatever, but I can't open my store because of the governor's mandate. My business was a viable business, but not if it's closed for 8 to 12 weeks. No, I would say almost no business can be viable if it's a walk-in type store situation and the governor of your state has told you you can't conduct business. So you have to can the average business pub that open to the public handle 12 weeks of not being able to conduct business? I would argue probably the lion's share of businesses can't. So at that point, what would you do? So the bill allows me to contact my local bank and say, hey, look, here's our I would assume it goes something like this. Here's our financials for the last 3 to 5 years. We are a viable business. We're not like a fly by night or whatever. But you can see we've been forced to close for now 4 weeks or whatever, and it looks like it might be another 2 or 3. We need X money to keep the thing from going under. And that's the process that the Senate
yeah.
has created, right?
You're. Let's just skip the liquor stuff because in Pennsylvania,
I didn't mean, I'm just the only one I'm
yeah,
thinking
okay.
of.
Let's just do
Right,
a
yeah.
pizza shop, all right?
Pizza,
Because I
there you
know
go.
where my buddy's going
Right. God
through
help
with all this
you,
stuff. And,
Pennsylvania pizza, but yes, okay.
you know,
Pizza.
pizza, a large part of his business is to take out anyway, but he does have a sit down business. A lot of pizza shops do, and that was taken out of the mix by the Pennsylvania governor, correct? So it's an automatic cut into his business. And when you cut the business, obviously you keep it on these employees. Got too many employees. One of the busiest pizza shops around. You got to let an employee go. He doesn't want to do that. So you're better off, not putting his own family at risk, not putting his employees at risk. He closes down a pizza shop, okay, for a week, maybe 2. He calls up his bank, talks about this SBA loan process, says, listen, I'm going to lose, I think the cutoff date for turning over your paperwork of previous transactions, I think is like 1 year in, like, so December 2018 or whatever. Um, uh, and then December 9th, 2019 is your other cutoff date. You can't go back further than that in some cases. So they're basically just saying, hey, listen, I'm going to lose $10,000. Could I have a $10,000 loan? And all of his employees are going to be furloughed. And the
Right.
beauty of what we did with the Senate bill is we buffed up the unemployment process. So it's not the extra, staying on there the extra couple of weeks normally would come out of the employer's pocket. It's not going to. The
That's good.
unemployment insurance is covered 100% plus $600, and so all of his employees are taken care of and covered by the government. His loan is then going to be forgivable when he opens back up, provided he does not lay off permanently or fire any of those employees. So of course this is fantastic. Now he has to make a choice. Will my customers come back if I close for 2 weeks for health reasons? Because I can still legally give takeout, but I'm doing it at the risk of my own family. I'm handling their money. There are people coming in. I'm responsible keeping them 6 feet apart. If somebody older comes in and sits down at the table and they report me to the Department of Health, I get fined by the governor in Pennsylvania. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons for him to just say, you know what, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and whatever. Now, he would have normally just eaten that loss, being a successful businessman, whatever. He's more concerned about his guys. And he only has 3 or 4 of them, but
Sure.
they're like, they become like family after a while. It's really hard in a cash business like pizza shops. It's really hard to trust people. And he runs a business with his dad, retired, but his brother and him run it. They've got 3 or 4 guys that they trust. They don't want to see them hurt. So what they do is these guys get furloughed. They get backed up. They're full pay by the government for at least the time being over the next 6 weeks, whatever. And then he's going to open up probably in 2 weeks. And those guys are going to get full pay for being off 2 weeks. And then he's going to pay them back whatever wages they had before they were furloughed, and he's going to eventually pay back that $10,000 loan if he takes one out of lost business. So this is why I'm curious to why people think that the economy is going to completely tank, right? I mean, the restaurant businesses are going to completely tank. Yeah, of course, a lot of them are going to be in trouble, but their lease payments, even their mortgages, if they own the building, which is pretty rare in the restaurant business, but if they do,
Very
they
rare.
can get deferments and they can get loans to pay and bring everybody back when the time comes. It's got to be a money freeze. The banks can't be breathing down your fucking neck for a lease or a mortgage or a rental. At the same time, you can't pay them, and the government's trying to keep you afloat. Everybody's got to freeze. Everything's frozen. Hold harmless the banks for not waive that regulation or requirement that they have to, stay month to month, or their interest rates go up if they miss a payment. That's frozen right now. The federal government is going to oversee that process. These businesses are going to. We're all frozen right now for at least a good month. And nobody, I'm going to say a lot of people are going to be made whole, Glenn. So this notion that we're going to collapse as a society and collapse as a restaurant industry or resort industry or whatever, an airline industry, it's just simply not true, because we're on a finite period of time. And what the government has done is tremendous, because what we did is we authorized not the maximum, but pretty close to the ceiling of what we could have done on the flip side of the Federal Reserve, freeing up some liquidity up to $4 trillion. But the 2.2 trillion that we actually authorized, that's where your power comes from. If you're the president of the United States, you don't control the purse strings. You can't direct the Fed to do this, and that. But when the Treasury has congressional authority for $2.2 trillion, it's game on. The president and Mnuchin will decide what happens. And the so-called oversight that Pelosi put into the bill is all but just alerting congressional chairmen about who gets what and why. I mean, and putting money in for an inspector general who will probably get like a whistleblower to come up with some bullshit lie, because we know how Democrats
Yeah.
work by now. But I'm
Right.
telling you,
Well, what about
this
the?
is a
What
massive victory for
it
us.
sounds to me like it's good fiscal policy, except for the Democrat demanded carve outs, which are shit, like the that Kennedy
Okay,
Center
but
thing. No, but
that's 2
I'm not going
billion.
to harp on that. My point on that though is that the Kennedy Center made a
Who
case
cares?
to get some money to cover itself, but then
Furloughs.
they took the money and
Yeah.
totally disregarded their real assets, which is their people, right? I'm amazed, and I would assume that's because they weren't put under the same. Like, if my business
But they're
needed a
coming,
loan,
but they'll be back, and really, realistically, we almost tricked the Democrats into doing this shit, because
right?
we gave them a very limited window to say, what do you want? Because Pelosi was collapsing. Pelosi put that bill we've talked about twice now to stop the momentum that was happening on Saturday night, Sunday morning in the Senate to get the bill done.
Mm-hmm.
She knew she couldn't bring the whole House back. She knew she had no fight against this. So what she did, she
Actions
put
have
that bad idea
consequences,
bill, the, the,
people.
the bill of bad ideas, 1,400 pages of bullshit. And a lot of them, were so outrageous that the press and Twitter just kind of leaped on it and exposed her. And Schumer was furious, because Schumer's like, what the fuck are you doing? You're throwing in the Green New Deal when I'm trying to get money into places where we need to go, and some oversight. So what happened? They asked for humanities, museums, and Kennedy Center. I mean, realistically, less than 2 billion out of 2 trillion. I mean, that's like
No, I know
literally the smallest. I know, but
it's
here's the best part about it. The
inconsequential,
fact that you
right?
talk about it, the fact that Sean Hannity talks about it, is awesome, because everybody knows who put it in the bill.
It's corrupt. That's right.
It wasn't us.
Right.
You know how beautiful it is for me to turn on the TV as a staffer, as somebody who's worked on appropriation bills before and spending bills. You know how beautiful it is for me, Glenn, to turn on the TV and hear a lot of commentating and pundits talking about 2 billion out of 2.2 trillion, ignoring the fact that over $2 trillion was just dumped, basically dumped into Treasury authority to purchase and take over and commandeer and nationalize a portion of our economy. They walked right into the trap. And a lot of people like to say trap, trap, trap. This was a trap. They were desperate to get something in there, and they stuck PBS and a couple of museum and
Some
humanities on
nonsense,
there.
worthless shit that's
It's nuts.
it's not
It's
like they got
nuts.
anything that's going to help them in the reelection, or in their case.
Well, listen, Glenn, why do you think they're so ready to talk phase 4? Because the phase 4, Nancy says, is coming out of the House. Therefore, it's going to be the Senate's job to take out stuff, which is going to be harder to do because they got to get 60 votes. So the beauty of it was Pelosi passed phase 1 and 2. Senate said, okay, we don't like it, but we're going to send it to the president. They left town. The Senate picked up the bill, which traditionally we don't do out of the Senate. It derives out of the House, crammed it down her throat. It was just a work of art. Everything was beautiful. And for all the conservatives out there who mindlessly parrot this bullshit about 2.2 trillion, uh, uh, it should have been 3.2. It should have been 4.2. That's what Trump has been trying to tell the Republican Party now for years. There is no punitive aspect to the debt as long as you are the chief player, even if it's monopoly money, because we all know only an idiot believes in the gold reserve anymore. There is no backup. This is the confidence game. So we are the leading economy in the world. Whenever we produce debt, it is the most desirable debt to purchase in the world. You know why? Because there's no other place in the world that has desirable debt. China had an opportunity after 2008 when we struggled. So they did what they did. They got exposed for a couple years. They rebounded. We don't have that problem this time because China is going to be exposed to the same type of vulnerability in their market recovery as we are, because we have them paying massive tariffs, purchasing massive amount of products from us. They have lost their standing in the world as the white knight. Everything's under the microscope right now, including their standing in general with the WTO. And if you want to think about what they're doing for their own economy, they're putting like 13% of what we are back into their economy because they can't do any more than that,
Mm.
because they have sunk their currency so low that they do not have any flexibility to do that. That's not the case in our perspective. Through a perfect storm of events and Jay Powell not responding to the president and our economy doing so well, we are in a very unique point that we can dominate coming out of this even more than we dominated going into it.
So let's talk
So
about that. This is
this is
exciting.
huge for us.
Let's talk about
Very
Trump.
exciting.
Trump talking about the other 2 trillion he wanted to do initially in phase 1 and 2. He's now floating this idea of a $2 trillion infrastructure bill, which I assume would be what the shovel ready Obama
No more shovel
lie.
ready, but don't ever use that phrase.
No, I'm
That's
just saying
bullshit
that
phrase.
that was the lie they use to
That
steal
was
a
the lie
bunch
they
of money.
used. Yep. Yeah.
But actually, had we at that time when was that, 2009, was it, somewhere around there? If in 2009 the Democrats weren't confidence tricksters and criminals and actually wanted to do something with the American infrastructure rather than this bullshit cash for clunkers and all that other garbage, something tells me if a bill materializes, that's what this will be, right? Actual reinvestment in America.
Real. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that this is, well, I've been talking about infrastructure for a while, but that's because that's my bailiwick, right? I mean, that's where I literally came
Right.
from in the whole process years and years and years ago. And I was there as a staffer at the state level, just frustratingly working with lobbyists in the DC arena to try to get them to move away from this limited scope of shovel ready bullshit, which was a union job giveaway stuff. I mean, all the permitting has already been done. There was no, all the engineers, all the other guys, the engineers and environmental engineers, all those people never got employed. It was all done. It was just the union guys, private union guys went out and did it, shoveled it up literally. And, and asphalt jobs and bridge jobs that were already ready to go, permitted. What we need to do is something a whole lot different. And let me tell you what, if there's one more attractive thing in the world than purchasing American debt, is purchasing and buying into American infrastructure projects, because it's an automatic return to the way we do things. And we welcome foreign investment in that. And people are looking for a return in an uncertain world. That's one part of it. So it's got to be a P3 project. So the consortiums will come and work with us, multiple regions, consortiums. Some of it will be Chinese money. So what? I don't care. Some of it's going to be Australian pension funds, Canadian pension funds, and firms that they hire to work with us. And we're going to build bridges, and we're going to build roads, and we're going to rebuild a whole lot of other things. But we're going to have toll lanes, but not over across the whole highway. We're not going to turn everything into a turnpike. We're just going to have one lane. We're going to mitigate traffic. And if people want to pay more, like they do around Virginia and some parts of Texas and Florida and California, they're going to pay more. That money goes into the fund. It's an automatic return for whoever's investing in long-term infrastructure in America. P3 is the way to go. P3 was swept under the rug after the financial collapse of 2008. Private public partnerships, and I'm talking about a third of the money should be coming from the private sector globally, not American, globally, some American, but not all. And we get who to work? We get the construction unions back to work. We get all of our guys in the concrete asphalt industry back to work. Steel has to be produced in America for these projects. We are starting to put real family sustaining middle class wages back on the map at zero interest. We're basically going to, for the most part, we borrow about $1.275 billion, and then we bring in the $1.275 trillion really, and then bring in the rest from the private sector to match it at 0%. At a 50, well, you know what, 0%. I mean, we're building out a 50-year loan, 75-year loan at 0%. It's a no-brainer, Glenn, because we have never invested federally. We haven't done shit since 1997. We haven't raised the gas tax one dime since 1997, and there is no.
Now would be the time to do it when gas is $1.15.
We don't even have to do it. That's the beauty of it, Glenn. We don't even have to do it. We left it to the states to do it, in Michigan and Pennsylvania and California and New York, New Jersey. We have some gas tax stuff that we're doing on our own. But I got to tell you, if the feds come in on that level, we are going to finish stuff, and it's not just going to be about highway and bridges. It's going to be about ports. It's going to be about rail access and rail yards. It's going to be about electric, whatever you want, utility grids. It's not going to be about solar, wind, any of that crap.
You mean come into those fake alternative energy that's bullshit? Yes.
Yeah, well, you know what? We might give them 10% of the bill for that. We'll throw it in there to get Pelosi, Pelosi support. But I've got to tell you, the upside here is tremendous. A lot of guys who don't come from the infrastructure side of things don't understand the cascading effect that when you go to infrastructure and ride it all the way through, the long-term effects are, of course, really good, because any minute saved in traffic, as you know, time is money. I mean, if you ever were a project manager in a busy metro region, anytime your employee is an hour late or 30 minutes late or whatever the hell happens, an accident or whatever, it's time lost is money lost. And we have horrible gridlock and bottlenecks in California, Boston, New York. These have to be eased up. We can do it with tunnels. We can do all of it. But the ports, I think, are a secret recipe for us, because we're trying to load up. We want to be a major exporter of oil, and oil is not going to die. Okay. Oil may go on ice as far as an American industry, but we will not let them collapse. We will not let our independent contractors go broke. And we need, not only do we need port access, but we need dredging projects. And guess what? There's a dredging project in Alabama in this bill that was passed by the Senate. Guess how many dredging projects will be in an infrastructure bill we'll be able to finally do the Delaware River, which we've been wanting to do for fucking ever. And it's going to open up so many opportunities, so many jobs at the ports, full family sustaining wage jobs. It's time that Republicans look at the fact that we have successfully destroyed private unionization in this country, and it's time to let it slowly grow again. And when it gets too high again, it gets out of its, the weed length like it did in the late 70s, early 80s, then we'll have to crop the top again. But right now, I don't think it's a problem to guarantee significant wages to people to get these jobs done. I'm not worried about any of the Bacon Davis provisions on prevailing wage. I'm not worried about how far you can get your buck to go. The federal government right now is in a position to expend whatever it wants to recover this economy. And we're using a 45-day pause period to change structurally how we run this country for about a year. It's like giving Trump a card, like an American Express Unlimited for 1 year and saying, fix the country at 0%. That's essentially what we've handed him. And so you see why I don't like to make this a talking point, because if people understand what we did in that bill, the Democrats know what we did, okay? But they're not talking about it because that makes them look like losers. Republicans damn sure know what they did with that bill, but they don't talk about it because it's going to get the Democrats upset. Very interesting dynamic here. So I've tried to hold back a little bit, but in the end, you and I, we're small potatoes. We can let 250 people roughly know what's really happening here. McConnell will be the biggest, speaking of Shireen's point, McConnell will be the biggest obstacle because he's got guys in his caucus that are going to be spending conscious. And I think it's pretty funny that Trump made Elaine Chao, otherwise known as Mrs. McConnell, transportation secretary. They ain't for nothing. I think that was all a gamble, that he knew that this day would come, that she would have to use her persuasive techniques to get old Mitch to sign on with this in an election year. I apologize if I get a little excited about this. It's because I see opportunity, man. And frankly, 2 months ago, as rosy as everything looked, I think all of us were looking for the cliff. We were all thinking, okay, when are we going to hit that overvalued stock point? When are we going to hit that stretched out point where the bull market just runs out? When are we going to hit the point where Powell disagrees completely and we go up too high on interest rates and everything collapses? Listen, we just got a reprieve from all that, man. Wartime presidents are the most powerful presidents in the history of America.
Exactly.
Keep that in mind.
Exactly. And that's why I think even people like me who are, highly skeptical of a lot of stuff going on right now, I'm keeping my mouth shut because this is a huge political opportunity for our side. And we can't afford to squander it. I mean, I've been praying for 20 years that we would have a point where the Republican Party could produce the kind of results that those scum in the Obama administration were able to produce for their people. And here we are. Here we are, and there are people belly aching about it. I don't get that.
Yeah, it's I think, to your point, man, what gets me excited about this shit is we're finally breaking the rules, man. I feel like a rebel now because I came up to the same general conservative channels you did. I still hear the voice of Buckley in the back of my head when cautioning about government expenditures and maybe a balanced budget amendment and things like that, But realistically, that stuff is dumb. That stuff is antiquated. That stuff is about a world where, you're not by far and away the number one economic military superpower. It's time to break rules. It's time to break. And guess what? we didn't start this. I'm going to do a takeoff on Billy Joel lyric here, but we didn't start the virus. And, it came and found us, and it found the world. China is getting the hairy eyeball from a large portion of the world. And we've been given an open playbook that includes $6 trillion, which is like giving your 16-year-old a shitload of money when you're saying, okay, honey, we're going down to Florida for the weekend. Don't have too much fun. Don't party too much. And then accidentally leave like your entire fucking ATM and passcode on the table. We have been given a very, very promising approach to solve whatever immediate final crisis and crunch, financial, by the way, would be in front of us. We have been given an opportunity that I never could have dreamed of before. And isn't it funny that the Democrats and Saul Alinsky and Rahm Emanuel would be the ones that emphasize correctly for us never to let a crisis go to waste?
But this is the point. In the world of the radical commie, everything is political. Nothing is human. Everything has to be viewed as a political opportunity or a political threat. That's how they've been playing the game since the 1960s. That's how they've been winning. While we may win elections, they win policy almost every single fucking time. And this is changing now. And I think the role of whatever Trump is trying to do to the Republican Party, going back to the fiscal responsibility we had 100 years ago, clearly not only is never going to happen, but it can't happen. The people have lost the taste for it, and we have a great game of, we want to return to a serene republic, but if you make any move to do that, suddenly, wait, I'm going to have to pay $600 for a 42-inch screen TV?
Yeah. Where are you going to cut?
Oh, then fuck that. Fuck that. Well, I want to return to the point where American money actually had real value and it wasn't money by fiat. Okay, so we're gonna start by doing this. Wait a second, you're gonna do that, but that's gonna shrink the economy by like 45% in like a month or two. Well, yes, it will, because it has to. Real value means a lot of the things that we're doing to grow the economy we can't do with strict fiscal policies like that. Then
that is exactly what no one understands, and that's exactly what the Bitcoin people are going to learn quickly, is that the reason why the federal government never really came down on you all is because they just didn't want to tell you that they're exactly the same as you.
Yeah.
It's not real.
Listen, let me just get on the record, so before I die, I can die happily. This is not going to end well, everyone, just so we're clear about it. We can bullshit as much as you want, but the check always is written and the waiter always comes with it. But I don't care, and here's why. Because this check may not be written for another 50 years or 100 years. We may be able to juice this thing longer than the republic actually is going to exist, right? I mean, how long do societies exist anyway? They don't live forever, right? And so here we are. We have a political opportunity to stop.
I'll do you one better than that. I'll do you one better than that, Glenn. That check is going to come. You sit at that table, you drink and eat to your heart's delight for 50 fucking years. When that check does come to you, you're going to tear it up and you're going to look at the waiter and say,
fuck you.
Don't you remember? Yeah. I own this restaurant.
Yeah.
That is a perfect metaphor for what America is. We can't be, no one can destabilize our financial system because no one has the majority of our debt to, and even if they tried to buy out, even if you did give up, allow China to buy a very significant portion of your debt, even if they bought it all out at the same time, the strength of your currency would go through the roof.
I've been saying for 20 years that when foreign countries buy our debt, it's a win-win for us. We can't
Of
lose.
course,
There's no way to
it's a
lose,
win-win
right?
for them too. It's a win-win for
Well,
everybody.
potentially, not always. I mean, ask the Japanese, right? I mean, you can fuck it up, but it's
Well, no. We got screwed buying their debt up,
but they
not the
listen.
other way around.
The Chinese, they can the thing the liberal, the lefty economists always say is what's going to happen if China calls us? They own all so much of our debt. What if? I'm like, what if they'll lose their shirt and we'll laugh at them? That's what'll happen,
So we
essentially.
get so rich.
Yeah,
That literally means they give us the money for their debt. They buy it off,
exactly.
and we become richer. I mean, but the problem is our dollar goes higher. But so what? We'll recover from that. Oh well, if that's the worst thing that could happen. And where's China going to invest next? Africa, Europe.
Right. There's
Where are they going?
look. There's
Where are they
there's the
going?
day will come when all of our markets will be finite. The markets are finite as far as geography. I believe they're infinite as far as the potential for value. I'm not one of these. I'm not a leftist in any way, shape, or form. I believe in the expanding pie, right? Which I don't think anyone on the left believes in the ever expanding pie. To them, everything is a rationed resource, right? Everything is anyway. Fuck these people. I'm totally comfortable with playing the game. We know what the rules are. Trump is the first president to actually play it. To actually play it. And I know someone's going to say, what about Reagan? Reagan did not play the game, not the economy game. Now, maybe he wanted to and he couldn't. Factual, we didn't have the Senate, we didn't have the House at that time.
Yeah.
But honestly, I read a lot about Reagan. I lived through it. I don't think he had the taste for it. Right? It wasn't in his He wasn't a businessman.
I,
Right?
you know what? That's exactly the point I was going to make before you said it. I don't think he had the understanding because you know what? As a developer, we talked about this many times. I think it went over most people's heads. They thought we were just bullshitting about Donald Trump being a developer and owning buildings and all that other shit. But you, when you do that and you encounter the swings in the markets, you encounter all the shit but you also encounter the benefits of property, which is depreciation and all kinds of tax write-off possibilities. And Trump has been studying the angles for many years. And he also has been doing financial business in other countries for many years. He understands what interest rates, how they impact deals, and he understands worker rates and how they understand or are mixed with all the deals and the final amount of what a building would cost and things like that. He's willing to make concessions. He wants a good building. He doesn't like a shitty building. He knows one bad building is going to hurt his brand forever. But at the same time, he's been pretty good about not going over budget. This American economy is not subject to a project estimation. It's really not. He built something that could sustain a lot more than 35, 45 days of everybody standing in place. I mean, honest to God, the infrastructure is not going to change. I mean, it's kind of like evacuating a town for whatever reason, gas leak or whatever, and coming back 30 days later and start the town up again. There's going to be a 30-day lag, right? You're going to have a 30-day where everybody had to pay the bills from the previous 30 days. And it's going to take a 60-day period just to get even. And then on the 90th day, you're going to start bringing back the profit. I think that's a very similar thing that we're going to have in this economy. We're going to bail what needs to be bailed. We're going to get loans in place where there need to be loans. The economy is essentially, the markets anyway, are essentially going to be governed by a trading group that has been designated by the Department of Treasury to make the trades on behalf of the government. And is that going to be a little picking of the winners and the losers? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of that, but we're going to pick the winners that are going to return a higher yield, that are going to get Warren Buffett's attention and other people that follow him. And we're not going to have these wild swings in the markets anymore. We're going to have like 5,000, 6,000 people die next week, Glenn, in 2 days. And I don't think we'll see the market swing below a loss of 3%. I just don't think we will, because of all the protection and the power that's been put into place. There's just not that wild speculation anymore. We know what we're up against. We know what, the market doesn't like uncertainty. We're telling them what's going to happen. And provided we don't have overrun healthcare facilities, death in the streets, mayhem, then I don't think we're looking at any more wild market swings, more than 5%.
Oh, I hope you're right. By the way,
And to my
Kathy
final point, you're a New Yorker. You
was
come
a New
from a
Yorker.
state, was a New Yorker, co-New Yorker, whatever. You got 8.5 to 9% of the total GDP. Uh, well, maybe not total of the GDP, but around trillion contributed to the total GDP. Yeah, how would New York fare if just looking at it right now and seeing where we are right now on the curve? Say we did nothing, which they barely did anything a week ago, right? So we know that New York's not going to come down for another couple of weeks, but dead people, scared people, all kinds of stuff impacting the financial district of the country. Would we have a positive GDP? Is there any way that if we just decided to power through this as if it were a regular flu, and let's just say 50,000 New Yorkers died in 3-4 weeks, wouldn't that cause longer term damage to the country than trying to prevent something over 30 days?
This is one of the, as I said weeks ago, this is one of those open-ended questions. We'll never know. But one thing is for
Yeah, I think you
sure.
know a little bit though,
But wait,
because when
one
the
thing is
towers
for
came down
sure.
and
Yeah, but
3,000 people died, it hit the market really fucking hard.
well, but okay. The market, first of all, the value of New York's economy, by and large, is the stock market. Right? If you take the stock market out of New York State,
Because that's where all the financials are. So
uh-huh.
the Dow would be crushed.
Okay. So what scared the shit out of those people on 9/11 was that they got the World Trade Center, they got the
Mhm.
Pentagon, and they're going to get us next. And nobody wanted to go into that building anymore. And there was a discussion at that time, I remember it well. You know what? Actually, what the stock market actually is doesn't need a physical location. We could create places, decentralized places all over the country where people can locally go to some gymnasium with a, at that time, I guess, a laptop or a terminal. Now, just your cell phone with a, some sort of encryption, logging in to some encrypted server. And we can have a stock market that's been decentralized. That was not done, obviously, because the effect on the New York State economy would have been devastating. And the libs in Albany bribed a whole bunch of people to not let that happen. I think it's inevitable that it happens, man. I think it's inevitable that the New York State economy, you want to talk about flattening things, flattening the curve? I think if we're smart, and I think Trump is, that as dark as it looks now, this could be his Gerald Ford moment, telling New York to go fuck itself, not during the election cycle, but next year when he gets reelected, to let the depth of their inability to deal with serious problems. These are not serious people that run New York State. They're a bunch of good time Charlies. Everything's great until it's not. They're not serious people. You remember, like, while this virus was starting up, what was Bill de Blasio and his administration doing? They were doing their version of, why don't you go hung a Chinese person, a
Yeah,
la
it was.
the Turin-based ad campaign that the taxpayers of Italy paid for. In more ways than one, they paid for that one, didn't they? Right? It's like, oh, but I'm not a racist. I'll hug a Chinese person. Yeah, I'm not a racist either. I've had sex with Chinese women. I have no problem with Chinese guys. I'm friends with all different types of Asian people. But if they come from a place that is known to have a virus going around, hey, You can call me whatever the fuck you want. I'm not going to be hugging nobody. And that's the reality. I think New York has existed in this kind of bubble, and I think it has to end. There's just, you can't, maybe you tell me, you can't indefinitely run one of the largest states in the union with non-serious people for 40 or 50 years and not end up in some disaster. I mean, we're almost there now. I mean, look, if 20,000 people die in New York, it's not going to be Donald Trump's doing. That will squarely fall on Bill de Blasio. And fuck Andrew Cuomo. He's another one of these guys. A LARPer. He's a fucking LARPer. But if Bill de Blasio was in charge of the early days of this virus, because guess what? Without the 5 boroughs, New York is as just as affected as like Montana. All right, the deaths are happening here in the 5 boroughs. And that's another story which we're not going to talk about until this thing is over. All right, why is it that New York City has the lion's share of all the infection? I wonder. And what have I been railing on for 3 years every time I go down? But we're going to talk about
very sensitive subject matter.
We're going to talk about that next year, okay? Next year we'll talk about that. But I'm just saying there are no serious people here. You've got people in the New York City Council who don't even know. They have no idea what planet they are on. You have felons who have gun permits issued by the NYPD. Because guess what? Unlike Laura Loomer, who can run for whatever the hell she's running for and not get a Twitter account, in New York City, if you're a part of the government, it doesn't matter what kind of crimes you've committed. Everything will be forgiven, and you can go get yourself a gun and a carry permit. We don't live in serious times. That's why, and you want to know why I'm not there? You want to know why I pulled Bonnie out? I wasn't afraid of any fucking virus for her. I was afraid of the kind living under the thumb of these douchebags could be just as deadly as contracting some virus because they will find a way to make things worse, right? I'm telling you, Adam, the level of incompetence, of insanity, of childishness, I'm amazed that anyone is going to survive over there. I fear for all of them because they're just crazy. They're not designed to deal with real world problems. They're designed to steal money and pretend like money grows on trees and everything's going to be great because it's always been great and they've never been called out on anything. And no one has ever pushed a New York Democratic politician to explain themselves in probably 30 or 40, since 9/11. It hasn't happened. So 20 years at least. And I don't think they like it very much. You notice Cuomo gets very testy when they start asking, like he'll shit on Trump. You saw that thing? He's up there and they're like, Donald Trump says that he's been sending, the federal government already sent you like thousands of ventilators and you've been sitting on them for distribution. He goes, that is an erroneous and it's an outright lie. Now, we do have a stockpile of ventilators that I have been sitting on, and we will be. Adam, if that was a Republican, that guy would be literally torched to the ground for that level of incompetence and dishonesty. But somehow, Andy Cuomo, the douchebag, no one wants to call him on anything. Because the mafia, which according to his father does not exist, I have read, you mentioned Mario Puzo. You mentioned Mario Puzo the last show we did. Well, thanks to Mario Puzo, I read some shit, and I think I know a little about the mafia now, and it seems to be filled at the top with knuckle-dragging troglodytes who wantonly break the law, murder, mayhem, prostitution, drug dealing, in order to enrich themselves. All I'm saying, Andrew Cuomo, you might be one of these tough guys, but that doesn't mean you're competent in a crisis, right? And he sits there doing his little version of trying to be Donald Trump, right? Giving his little daily press conferences. Yeah. But the rubber is not meeting the road with this guy. And I think if you're right, and we start seeing 5,000, 10,000 deaths in a matter of days, I would hope, and this is here it is. I would hope to God, the president can't do it, but someone in the Republican Party who's not even affiliated, like the Roger Stone wing, we should monopolize on this and nail this motherfucker to the wall. This guy is poison. He has literally turned this state into a giant clown show. It became such a clown show, I had to leave for my own health, my own mental health. I had to leave the place of my birth and the place I was planning on dying in. I'm not particularly happy about, from George Pataki onwards, I have not been actually, if we're going to be really honest about it, the last time we had a decent governor, wow. Did we, Adam, help me out here. Did we ever really have a decent governor in my lifetime?
Yeah, first term Pataki's as far as I go back.
But he sucked, even his first term. Okay, we'll give it to George Pataki. George, you get that first term. I'm going to throw it to you. But other than that, we've had, what do we have? 3 terms of Cuomo the senior. One of the most incompetent, repulsive creatures ever to inhabit a governor's office. That they've renamed some new bridge, which, by the way, is a fantastic bridge. But the fact that it has that guy's name on it, I avoid that bridge. I will take the Palisades and pay the extra money to go over the George Washington Bridge rather than have to see that Cuomo name. What do you think of them apples? Anyway, I'm done. I'm telling you, Adam, this stuff I've had my moment. It's been welling up in me for 15, 20 years. We don't have serious. The city council is literally filled with mentally ill freaks, absolute freaks of nature, who will be fiddling when Rome is burning like they're doing today. You think the city council is absorbed with the deaths that you say are coming next week or 2 weeks or whatever? I guarantee you they are not. I guarantee you they are arguing over what happens to you if you use the wrong personal pronoun on some waitress. That's what they're wrangling with today, because that's what they've been wrangling with, for 10 years now. Right?
Yeah, and God forbid that there be a little bit of an anomalous statistic versus like, oh my God, we had 0.3% of our deaths have been transsexuals. This is an outrage. I mean, that would be.
You're absolutely right. The only way to get these freaks to even focus on reality is to what the libertarians used to call cross-dressing the issue. Right? You don't make the argument, you don't make classical arguments like you have the right to resist tyranny of the government. That's why we have guns. You cross-dress it and say the endemic racism against African Americans and gay people in America is so out of control. They deserve to be armed like we all do to protect their life, liberty. So in order to get anything done in New York City, that's what you literally have to do. Maybe you meant that as a joke. I don't know, but it's true. It's absolutely true. You have to buy. You have to exchange money. Money has to change hands. You go to one of the big gay groups, and here's some money. Can you please do some press conferences and agitating that the gay community is under threat from the coronavirus? And by doing that, I will be able to then go to the city council and get some action on it. But I need you to be my beard on this issue. This has been going on in Manhattan for hundreds of years, but it's gotten particularly bad in the last 20. And that's what drove me out. I couldn't take it anymore. And under Bloom Turd, it went from a case of the measles to stage 4 cancer. It got so bad under Bloom Turd that you didn't even have normal politics anymore in New York City. There was no grassroots politics anymore because he bought it all off. He was paying everybody. Black churches, Puerto Rican churches, white churches, gay men's health crisis, lesbians in crisis, teenagers who wear too much makeup in crisis. Everyone was in fucking crisis, but they weren't because they were all getting paid by the city hall because he had unlimited money to throw around. And I was hearing liberals, communists complaining to me that Michael Bloomberg has destroyed the political fabric of New York, maybe permanently, because everyone is on the dole. Everyone's on the take. Nobody actually has their own positions anymore. They're getting talking points. Remember early days, Adam, you pointed me to some weird blog that looked like it was made by a 5-year-old. And you told me this is actually like some sanctioned blog. Those bullet points you see are the talking points every day for certain people. I was amazed by this. I'm like, oh, this is like the old days in the newspapers where someone would put in a help wanted ad, but really it was like a Russian spy talking to his handlers or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going off here, but I'm telling you, man, New York, if it wasn't for Donald Trump breathing down their necks and the knowledge that this is for real, and if there are a lot of bodies, somebody's going to pay, and something tells me as much as they want to LARP it out, these Democrat politicians who literally did nothing or were encouraging people to go out and hug people in Chinatown or cough over each other by going out and enjoying a movie, the day. I'm just saying, I don't think people understand that haven't lived here how
I think
insane it is here.
They recognize, I think, with a little bit of trepidation, which should be outright fear, that Trump is a New Yorker and he's paying especially close attention. And if you, want to give him accolades, he might reciprocate. But if you want to attack him, he's going to attack you. And he's got a much bigger bowling ball pit than you do.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And the fact of the matter is, New York's failures, he'll be more than he'll outsize all that. Cuomo will have a lot of it on his plate, and De Blasio is just a disaster. I think you're right about that.
Listen, man, I'm
they
telling
were totally
you, Cuomo's bad, but Cuomo is just, I think, a bad Democrat governor. But he's not sick. And Bill de Blasio, you could probably do better just picking some rando whack job in Bellevue Hospital and just putting him saying, hey, you're the governor. No, I'm Napoleon, man. I'm Napoleon. Okay, Napoleon, you're now governor too. Yeah, okay. He couldn't be any worse. De Blasio literally did not become mayor to run the city. The political party apparatus is running the city. He's there just to indulge whatever bullshit he wants to do on any given day. He's not living in any kind of reality. As much as I hate Michael Bloomberg, Bloomberg at least was a manager, right?
This kind of broke that fever dream that New Yorkers were in, thinking that, is de Blasio right? I mean, are we all supposed to be living in his world of whatever? Yeah. No, it really, now they went down the rabbit hole and they discovered that it's an issue. It's de Blasio. It's not them. It's the situation, and that's it. Did you Hun? A bit up. Okay. Just give me a minute then.
I mean, we know that Democrats can deal with reality. You look at what California has been doing. Just because you're a communist piece of shit doesn't mean that you're completely incompetent as a manager. And that's my point, that Bill de Blasio is not a manager. He is literally like a Don Quixote figure, tilting at the windmills every day. And even a knuckle-dragging moron like Cuomo is so far superior to someone like de Blasio that even Cuomo is looking at this guy going, how is it? He's got to be thinking, because if I was Cuomo, I'd be thinking this motherfucker has screwed my entire state. Because...
Yeah, that's where it's at, right? I mean, you got how many in your state all told? About 20 million or something. You got 8.7 in the city.
But if you looked at the stats right there, every day I have an app on my phone to see where all of the cases, confirmed cases are, where all the deaths, where all the cures, people who are being cured. And it's updated real time. And one thing I noticed days ago is that if you look at New York State, it'll give you a raw number of total infected people. And then it'll break it down by county. And isn't it fascinating that like 80% or more of everything is happening in the 5 boroughs. It's not happening in Albany, not happening in Buffalo. Who, if you've ever been there, you would think that's where do competent people go to die? Buffalo, Albany. That's where you try to find a competent person. Good luck. But it's not happening there. It's happening in New York City. And unless you've spent time talking to one of the many wackadoodles that are in our city council, I don't think it would make sense why that is. These people literally.
I've seen a couple so-called Republicans on Fox, and I got to say, like, where are you getting these people?
Oh my God!
How do you get a Republican seat? I mean, I know there are some spots but nonetheless, they don't seem like really.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Lucid.
Yeah, anything.
Is that the word you're looking for?
It's the wrong word, but something.
We've got more than one. We've got dozens of people on the city council that view. You remember in college, you would talk to these college Marxists, like they just discovered Marxism, like the way a person just discovers religion, and they think they've now
avoided that whole.
Yeah, but you talk to them, and it's like everything in the universe now has been explained thanks to this 120-page pamphlet written by a guy who died, who, by the way, converted to Catholicism on his deathbed, like Jerzy Kosinski, another commie. So really, they're all fake. But whatever, that's where we're at. You have these people who think they believe it, that Donald Trump created this virus, the Chinese spread it for him. You got to listen to some of our city council. I know Philadelphia is bad, but Philadelphia is like the fucking Philadelphia is like the Sunni is like a Sunni Albany compared to New York City, which is like Berkeley. I mean, the city council believes that the real threat here is Trump and the government and its reaction. And, if Obama was in there, they would just slavishly be cheering him. That's why I don't take any of these people seriously. Right? Either they're insane. There is no either. New York City is run by mentally deficient freaks. That's why I had to get out. I refuse to live under the thumb of mentally ill, psychotic people. Right? I can't do it anymore. I have too much respect.
I think you underestimate how close Philadelphia is getting to that. Chicago, by the way, is already there.
Oh, yeah. Chicago's
Detroit. I mean, at least you guys have income. But the problem
because of the Wall Street. That's why we got to get Wall Street out.
I mean, you got your financials and other stuff. And plus, you just have tourism like out the
Wait, you mean... Wait, Gingrich, you mean we had tourism?
Yeah, well, it'll come back, trust me.
I don't know, man.
Let me tell you this much, dude. I'll tell you how to make money. You go back into the city and wait for it to hit its peak. And when people start dying in the streets, take spray paint around their body before the cops even get there.
That's a tourist
and then go and sell tours. People will come in the summer when it's all gone, and they'll be like, this is where New Yorkers died in the street. You'll make a shitload of money.
I got one better. In line with everything I've learned over the last 3 years on Twitter. Why don't we just make up a bunch of lies and rent one of those double-decker buses? And I will just charge people $25 and an hour, drive them around New York City with a microphone, and just make up the most outlandish bullshit that you've ever heard, but will be highly entertaining that people will probably accept as real. In a Democrat city, isn't that the way to reach out to your public?
I think that would be, it would be,
I'll give you a taste. Gingrich, we'll drive by the corner of 68th Street and Fifth Avenue. I'll say, and over here on this corner was the famous pile of 15,000 dead New Yorkers from the recent coronavirus outbreak that only last
I don't
week
know if
was
this
cleared
is
out.
I don't know if this is spontaneous contribution or not, but Leslie Coughlin likes your idea, or
Yes.
just happened to pick the wrong time
Oh well, this is
to
the best.
throw
I
25
assume.
bucks.
I listen. I'm going to take that as vindication of my idea. And also, Kathy has given us a donation on the online forum at
Uh,
magacoalition.com forward
let
slash
me tell you
donate.
something about. I said this last time. I mean,
She
Kathy
has a
Wood is
message
like
for you too, Adam. Here's the message.
Kathy Woody is turning into a Twitter warrior.
She
I
is, and she
mean,
says, "Thank you, Glenn and Adam, for all the work you do for us." There it is. So I'm going to be working on my fake tour. When do you think we can get this
yeah,
thing
I think
going?
you should
July,
do it. I mean,
August?
Kramer did it. You can do it. There's precedence there already for this whole thing. So, I've got my 2 hour limit run, and I'm gonna hit it tonight because I promised that I'm gonna keep it to two, and maybe Thursday again if it works with Glenn. I think we're gonna do another 2 hours because, frankly, 4 days is too long. I think
A lot
there's
of
too
things
much going on.
happening. Things are a lot of
Yeah, I
moving
think I
parts
think
right now.
Thursday, and this is just me. So if Glenn wants to finish his finish his New York rant, he can do it. But I got to say, I want to appreciate everybody hanging with us, and we're only getting started because there's a lot of stuff coming out that not only economically will be relatable for a lot of people, but the IRS is working right now to get that money to you, and we're going to discuss that on Thursday, when you can expect it, how it's going. I'm going to make some calls to some people that I know in the administration, and I'm also going to try to help out the people that haven't had a direct deposit return since 2018, and work to make sure that they know how to get that stuff in there. And again, and then by then I will have a few of my friends that have been working with the SBA on small business loans. Maybe we can help some people understand what it takes to keep that. But you don't, just because you shut your business down, you're not laying off your workers
Right.
into nothingness. The government is protecting them. They're okay. You need to protect your business now. Okay, we want you up and running. I don't care if you have a sub shop, pizza shop, Italian restaurant, whatever. Whatever it could be, small business. If you were considered non-essential and you had to shut down, we're gonna, this show, this particular podcast, is interested in that and helping you explore this stuff and find the answers. And so that's part of my job. And so I'm going to be doing that.
That's what we
And
should
Thursday
do
night,
because you would think that there would be some television outreach trying to extol the value of the bill on television in like 30 seconds. There's nothing.
you get nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing out there, man. It's pretty bad. Actually, a lot of why we gave or agreed to give PBS and NPR that money in the bill was that they would help get this, propagated out there, promulgated out there. And yeah, I think we both know that they won't interrupt their anti-Trump
No, they'll get it out there,
broadcast.
but it'll be a narrative we don't like. It'll be
Yeah,
like,
like they'll tell you the wrong way to go about it, but the point
yeah.
is like we do care about the people in here, particularly to make sure that they have access to the information to get what they. But what else is the point of listening to us other than the really bad jokes and poor William Shatner imitations, which are sometimes worth coming in, or you never know when Dr. Horka and
By the way, that was my favorite
Lookner
thing I've ever done was Horka.
will come back. It could happen again.
I've got a
It could
suit. Next
actually
time I'm
happen.
going to put on the cheap, bloated. I've got a suit off eBay. It's a shitty three-piece suit like he likes wearing that vest, man. Like
Yeah.
it's 1983 still. Probably that's
Put
what he
some
was
padding
wearing.
under it. Put some padding
Yeah,
under here, like you're
right.
40 pounds heavier.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna go for. I think Horka. I may even dress up as Horka when I do my. I've just decided I'm gonna do my fake tour of New York in the summer as a Periscope, and I'm gonna dress as Horka, walking around the city, um, with these fantastical stories, which I guarantee will not be true.
Not be true. Well, if it was true, it wouldn't be Gorka.
Correct.
So
Yes.
yeah, Ed, I will have a lot more questions for you, or I'm sorry, I will answer a lot more questions for you on specifics. And I think Thursday we might concentrate on exactly what's happening, where we're at in the process, who's going to get money when, all that type of shit. And then we'll look at the curves and all the stuff and see, is Fauci really like mysteriously hypnotizing the president into doing something that he shouldn't be doing, or are we really at where we're at in New York and New Jersey? And can California and Washington keep their curve down? That's all big news. We here in Pennsylvania are getting locked down county by county, and my particular county was just locked down yesterday, and it's just going to keep going. I don't know if yours is yet, but
It
probably will
doesn't
be
matter,
soon.
but it doesn't matter
Yeah,
because
I know. Where are you going to go?
we
You're
live
going
in
to
the
have
middle of
access
nowhere.
to your bank, pharmacy, and groceries. They
The
can't
o-
shut that down.
yeah, I mean, listen, my wife and I were like, maybe we'll go out, we'll get some dinner out tonight. So I called a few
Mm,
of the restaurants. No one picked up. It's shut down, man.
yeah,
It doesn't matter
yeah.
that my county is open for business, but the
Doesn't
governor
matter.
has mandated no one can conduct business unless you're Walmart or the supermarket or whatever, or
Well, you
CVS.
know what?
So how many
That's
times
why
can
your
you go to
that's why your
CVS
freezer's
as a
full.
date? Seriously, I mean, just I'm
That's why
throwing it
your
out.
freezer's full, and you got candles. You can light them up, in that. Actually, you can light that little 70s whatever that shit is.
The lava lamp.
Yeah, no, that little fireplace looking thing that
Oh my,
they had in the
yes, my
70s.
fireplace. I could, but
Because
it's
that's you light that thing up, have a romantic dinner or whatever. I'll see you guys on Thursday night. Thanks, Glenn. I'm gonna check off real quick. See ya.
Thursday. It is at what, 10 o'clock? I think we're going to be
Yep, 10
doing.
o'clock, people.
Yeah.
Tune in.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
So Thursday at 10 is the new deal, and maybe, just maybe, the Thursday show will be done. Will be broadcast. By the way, I want to thank. I don't know if Danger Zone. I want to thank Manuel Chavez III for his help. Manny has helped me greatly in the last day or two, or three or four. Other than the fact that he put some wrong stuff on a list, and I ended up buying. By the way, Manny, that drive that I bought sold. It sold in 2 hours. So that's some good news. I didn't lose any money on the drive, and my new drive is coming tomorrow. So this new computer I've built. Yeah, I bought the two fans, but by the way, I returned one of them and I got a refund. So I was only really out whatever the shipping was on that. I think it was like maybe $8 or something. So, other than those two little fuck ups, Manuel has been very good. He's donated some of his time. I haven't built a computer since like 1994 or 95. God, I'm getting old. And really, I would say in many ways, building a machine now is simpler than it was back in the day. There are fewer pieces, but I would also say that what pieces there are now like giant. I mean, like a heat sink. A heat sink back in the 90s looked like a half a candy bar, right? Half of a chocolate bar. Now the heat sink is the size of a brick. I was impressed by that. And the cost of the video cards, oh my god! I mean, we used to think spending $199 on a video card was insane, but you can easily spend 5, 6, 7, 8, even 1,000 on a video card now. But anyway, let me start making some sense. I'm all over the place. Thanks to Manny being on my case, I built my first computer, and it's a killer. That's what I was doing this morning. I couldn't sleep, so from about 4 to 6 in the morning, I put all these parts together. I have a new PC sitting on a desk in another room, and I'm just waiting for the RAM to arrive on Thursday. and then we're going to fire it up. So it's quite possible that on Thursday our show will be streamed from this box, and it's going to be, I think, a major evolutionary step in quality. You know, I'm doing all this right. Everything I've been doing everything on a 27-inch iMac, and it has some pretty good specs. This iMac, but like everything Apple does, it's good, but it can never really be great as far as, you know, the bells and the whistles. They just they believe in norming everything and making it look good. This computer, on the other hand, is like the best of everything. It's going to be insanely fast, and I look forward to trying to this thing out. And by the way, no hiccups tonight. Manny, I think the setting that did it for me was the no latency under tuning. That changed the game. That's what changed the game, I think. What year is my iMac? It's about 2 years old now. So you go figure it out. A 2017, I think. It's pretty new. And I'm actually so excited by this new computer now. I'm actually thinking, I'll make the decision when I actually start using this new computer. But if this thing is as good as I think it's going to be, I may take this computer I've been using, which is still a really great computer, wiping it and putting it in one of the guest rooms as just like the guest can use it. I'm like 60% thinking I'm going to go back to using Windows after 13 years of using Mac. So we shall see. We shall see for those in the danger zone. Yeah, the Mac is weird. And what's even weirder is that I never had a problem with this until like a week or two ago. So there's something is going on with the way OBS on a Mac interacts with Restream. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably the update. I'm willing to bet it is, because there was a major update. You know what? That's what it was. There was some major update like a week ago to the operating system, and I bet they broke some. Every time when we moved to Catalina, it literally broke OBS. It broke it, and I had to go into Terminal and kludge out some things just so we could keep streaming, right? Under Catalina. So I don't know. There's the reason I left the PC. I mean, I was using PCs since the very first IBM PC back in whatever that was, 1982 or 83. And by 2007, I left the PC world and went with the Mac. I left it because the Windows had become so crappy. And it was crashing, and I had to be reinstalled so many times in any given quarter. I couldn't take it anymore. And the Mac at that time was like a breath of fresh air. Oh, I install the operating system and use it for years, and it never fragments. It never has to be reinstalled within reason. I mean, sometimes every couple of years you have to. But it seemed like a really great. It was really for me. It allowed me to get the work done without focusing, because I wasn't a teenager. When you have nothing but time, you're going to. Well, now you're retired or whatever. I'm kind of like a teenager again. But when you actually have to get work done, you don't have time to constantly reinstall, troubleshoot other drivers, update. You don't have time for that shit. And the Mac freed me from that. However, we are now at that point where the Mac has the exact same issues that the PC had back in 2007. That Apple is arrogant, and they're making decisions unilaterally. And what are you going to do when I've committed to Adam Gingrich to do at least 3, maybe 4 streams a week under the MAGA Coalition banner, and I update my Mac, and every time I update my Mac now, I have to think, oh shit, is this going to break everything? That's no way to live. And the fact is that in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, Windows has gotten its act together, and now Microsoft is what Apple was in 2007. So I think I'm probably going to move back to Microsoft full time, which means, Mr. Chavez, that getting this M.2 flash card type drive probably was the smart move, because I'm going to end up running my entire life off this machine. Meaning I'm going to migrate my Photoshop, my Adobe licenses to it, my Microsoft Office licenses to it. All of my video encoding is going to be done there. All my audio encoding, everything will be done on the PC. And with any luck, this Macintosh will be sitting in that guest room, Mr. Chavez, for the next time you come here. I think that's the plan. And I'll leave the Windows partition on this Mac anyway. So if a guest comes here and wants to use Windows, they can do that. So that's exciting. It's the first time I've built a computer since the 90s. And the amazing thing was, when I was younger, I was much more impulsive. I wanted to do everything really, really fast. And so it sometimes had some dodgy results. But now that I'm getting old, I sat there like a fucking machine putting this thing together. It is completely pro. If Manny comes over here and looks at it, he's going to be like, whoa. I mean, it looks like a factory built machine, like all the little detail. I have all the cables out of the way. It's going to be pretty sweet. And they have this Hackintosh thing where you can bring the Mac OS onto the PC. And I'm thinking, why? Why the hell would I do that? The whole point of this exercise is to be free of this dual booting nonsense once and for all. And I just don't think there's anything left on the Mac operating system compared to where Windows 10 is right now that requires me to be using it anymore. And that's a heavy statement, right? It was a heavy thing for me to leave PC in 2007. What programs, though? See, but that's the thing, Mr. Danger Zone. What are the programs that... Let's be honest about this. The only programs that are unique to Mac that I'm using, the only reason I'm using them is because they don't have the really good version for the Mac. It's some Mac version of something that exists on the PC that they just doesn't exist on the Mac. Example, Microsoft Project. If you're a project manager at a high level, you're using Microsoft Project as a tool to measure the project life cycle, where you're at, how much has been done, how much is out there, and what's being worked on now. There was a version they put out, I think it was around 2004, for 1 or 2 years, and it was awful. Microsoft put it out, then they never put out another version. So what does this mean? It means that once I switched to Mac, I did a few projects on the side in the corporate environment. And what it meant is I had to run Microsoft Windows in a virtual machine and install a copy of Microsoft Project into the VM so I could have the tools necessary. If you're using it, look, I mean, I have tools that are Mac only for their version of Microsoft Project, and in a pinch, I can do it, but not in a customer environment. If you're going to a corporation and you're sitting down with the president of Avis, right, or a vice president of Avis, and you're using some bullshit Mac thing that costs like $69, they will literally get rid of you. They don't want to see that. They want to see you using Microsoft Project and that you know how to use it. So that's what I had to do. And if I switch back to PC, I can install Project again. I can install the beautiful thing about most of my licenses is that it'll allow me to run it on a PC or a Mac. Like I have 2 seats that I bought on the entire Adobe suite. Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, all of it. Every Adobe product, I have a license for 2 machines. One is in New York City, that license is used, and one is this computer now that I'm pointing at that is doing this stream. But why does it have to be on this Mac? Why can't I can easily just download the PC version. It doesn't cost me anything more. That goes for my my video editing software. I'm just looking at my icons here. Microsoft Office already owned the license to put it on the PC. Adobe already owned the license. Loopback, don't need it, because guess what? As Manuel and I were laughing last night, on the PC, you don't need some separate program to get the sound from Zoom to port through OBS. I won't need that shit anymore. What else do I have here? Zoom, already, that's no problem. OBS works actually better on the PC than it does on the Mac. The only thing I'd have to replace is probably a PC version of some of my... I have some programs I use to like encode video, re-encode video. But those aren't expensive. And I could probably, for a couple $100, replace those. The only real issue would be actually, it wouldn't be an issue, because you know what? I'm gonna run iTunes. That's why this. All right, that's why this computer is not going into another room. I'm gonna leave this iMac just to run my iTunes network. So anywhere in the house, I have a ton of stuff that you can watch: movies, television, audio. It's available throughout the entire house. Any monitor, any screen, you can bring up my entire music library. And guess what, Manny? Unless I'm booting into Windows. Because when I'm in Windows, you hear my wife screaming, "Is the iTunes on?" And of course it's not, right? Because it's everything. Anyway, so that's what this machine is going to sit at the corner of my new desk here in this office. So now whenever my wife turns on the TV, she can do the iTunes movies or whatever the fuck it is. And I will do all my work on the PC. And I'm looking through here. That's it. I mean, there's really nothing else that I'm using right now. And there's so many things else. So that's the plan. What does he say? Dangerous, you can use other stuff that is better. Yeah, no, listen, you forget, Manny, you forget that I used PC, the modern PC, up until around, well, I've always had a Windows partition, but I stopped using Windows as my productivity machine around 2007. But I still had like, what was I using at the time? I can't remember. What was I using as an audio? It was a Sony product for audio encoding and editing. And anyway, I already know what I'm going to get. I have copies of pretty much everything I need. It's just a matter of making that decision to do it and leaving iTunes on the Mac and just be done with that. And that kind of makes sense. Let iTunes live on a Macintosh where it belongs. And my stupid iPhones can be synced with the Mac. It's the one thing I probably won't do, is try to sync it with... Let's face it, syncing a iPhone on a PC is not the experience it is on a Mac anyway. And that makes sense, right? So I'll leave that, but I'll be doing all my streams on this new machine. And the recommendation Manny gave on my video card, it's the what is it? The MSI 20. It's the Nvidia, right? I think it is the 2070. So it actually has like it's been designed for live streamers. Yeah, SoundForge. That's what I was using. Thank you, Devin Tarrington. I still own a license to that, but it's probably like 10 years old now. But maybe, here's a tip, guys. Just because your software is 10 years old, I did buy it, and it has like the manuals and everything. Remember when they made manuals? Oh, yeah. I'm going to call them up and do my best crotchety old man routine and demand they give me an upgrade price on the new version of SoundForge. So I'll probably get it for half price or whatever. So that's what I'm going to do. Yes, that's what we'll be doing. You use AOL dial-up in Windows 3. Listen, That's a man. That's how a real man relaxes. Is on those AOL forums, man, and the AOL Instant Messenger that made my wife's friend a billionaire. Was it a billion? No, 100 millionaire. I think, not a billionaire. He wrote this program called ICQ, and then AOL bought ICQ, and it became AOL Messenger, and he made like a ton of money. He made so much money that his dad became a multimillionaire somehow. How does that happen? That means there's a lot of money on the table. And I'm not jealous at all. No, really, I'm not. He's a good guy. Yeah, I'm not going to be using Pine Email. I'm going to be sticking with Microshaft Office, right? I like Outlook. Why do I like it? Let's see. I've been using it for almost 30 years now, so it's kind of like, it's like I've tried other email programs, and it's not the same. Like Mac Mail. When you talk to these Mac people, they're all, Mac Mail, it's great. Mac Mail is terrible. And they'll say, how can you say that? It works flawlessly. I'm like, have you ever tried using it with Exchange? I'm sorry, with Office 365? Why would you want to use that crap? Well, let's see, because every professional person on the planet uses an Exchange account for their email. Yeah, but we're Apple. We don't care. And that's why no one takes it seriously. That's why you go to any corporation and you don't see Macintoshes everywhere. I'm sorry. And it's been how many decades we've been waiting for they've been waiting for Godot on that one. Yeah, but email is my life now. Right? All my business pretty much gets done over email. And the only email program that's better than Microsoft Outlook, and this will see if anyone remembers. So, does anyone remember Lotus Notes? Lotus Notes is a fantastic email platform, and it's that reason why it sucks. It's one of the greatest things you will ever use to get your email. Rock solid, encryption up the ass. You couldn't ask for a better platform to do email and collaboration and all this. But it's so complicated that it becomes like a torture. And Outlook Outlook is, your grandmother can use it, I can use it, you can use it. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too, right? Okay. So I want to thank Manny. He's been very kind, giving me some of his time, and now that this computer is almost activated, this game that he's been playing, the Space Wars game, I don't remember the actual name, but I will. I went and bought a copy of it, and we're going to do, I guess, you tell me, Manny, how's it going to work? Are you going to, you and I will play the game together, and you will stream it? I think that's what you wanted to do. And I think that'll be fun, right? Yes, Space Chica, Lotus and Novell. Lotus and Novell. Those were the days. Don't forget Cisco. Never forget Cisco. Novell was awesome. On Twitch, probably anything Manny does is usually Periscope, DLive, Twitch, and YouTube. I don't know if I missed one, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, just because Manny's here talking to us doesn't mean he's not also live streaming. He can be playing a game and thanking people for their donations and talking to us all at the same time. Amazing. There it is. You do Cisco VoIP. Oh, there's a living hell. A fresh hell. Cisco VoIP. Yeah. Didn't take me as a gamer. Listen, I started playing video games in the 70s. If you guys remember the coin-op Pong, or even before Space Invaders, there was Pong, there was Atari's Racetrack. I think it was called Racetrack, or Indy 500. There was a series of these really blotchy games, and then Sub Hunt around like 75, 74, there was Sub Hunt. And then, of course, Space Invaders, asteroids, and then everything blew up. Everything blew up, and I got my first computer around 1980. I think it was around 1980, 81. Hard to remember, it's so long ago. And as Kraftwerk said, I programmed my home computer and beamed myself into the future. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, the future ended up being a dystopian movie a la Omega Man. Not so much Star Trek, but what are you going to do? So, yes, remember Pix? So, Jake, you must be from the New York area originally. Channel 11, which is like a non-network station here. This was in the 80s, probably like... I'm thinking like 82, 83, 84, somewhere around there. So here's the deal. Kids would call a number on their telephone. They call the station, and maybe you get in. One of the lucky ones, like calling the radio station. And they would watch TV. And on the TV would be like some sort of video game, like you're shooting spaceships. And the spaceships would fly around, and sometimes they would fly near the X where the gun was. And you would yell, Pix. And some douchebag, you talk about, you would, Base Chica, you think your job sucks. Imagine being the guy who worked for this television station in 1983, whose job it was to talk to an 11-year-old on the phone. And every time the 11-year-old yelled Pix, he pressed the fire button on this video game. And everyone was watching it. It was like a 60-second, 90-second segment that they would run after school, once or twice or three times in that 4-hour block. And it was everyone's dream was to be able to get on that show and compete. And if you got a certain amount of points, I don't remember, Jake, what they gave you, but I think they would give you like an Atari, one of those Atari 2600 video systems, or one of the, maybe the worst, the Magnavox Odyssey, which I still have. I have a Magnavox Odyssey in a box, which was the original one that I was given as a gift back in, when was that, 82, 81? Best I know, it still works. It's got to be worth something. It's got to be worth $1 probably, but you like VoIP. It was my goal to get a job doing VoIP. Jesus. Well, I mean, there's somebody whose dream job is to, clean the garbage off the streets with a power washer. I will never stand in the way of somebody's dreams. That would be mean. But, man, having to deal with Cisco every day, I literally, I've known some of the guys at Cisco. It's like, oh, my God. I guess their products are probably pretty good now. You had a Commodore VIC-20. Beautiful. All that's left is a Super Slither cassette. Well, guess what, Base Chica? If you ever make your way out here, I've got an old computer museum. It's all boxed right now, but I've got a TRS-80 Model 3, a Model 1 with the expansion interface. I got a VIC-20, a Commodore 64. 2 fully functioning Apple IIs, not 2Cs, not 2Es, the original Apple II with monitors, original monitors, and the original joystick, which was like this. I also have a, a Sinclair kit computer, unmade. It's still in kit form. An original from I think it must have been from around 1980 or 81. Power washing, that's how power wash business is good money. The Tandy 1000 HX, yes. That must have been what, 85? 86, somewhere around there. Gorf, yes. Somewhere in storage I have all those original coin-op games. I own an original full-sized coin-op Gorf, Defender, Asteroid, Space Invaders, Battlezone. There's a whole mess of these that I put into storage when I left IBM. I'll probably never see them again, which is fine because, now that I'm in my 50s, it's kind of silly for a guy in his 50s to have these giant 1970s video games in his house. It's I would think people would question my sanity, but you never know. Sinclair, what a crappy computer, but what a fun thing to build, huh? I think it had 1 or 2K. That was it. 1 or 2K. So, yeah, Crossbow was good. There was one like legendary coin-op game. It was called Chiller. I don't know if you guys remember Chiller. It took the crossbow and mixed it with a game that was like set in Transylvania where you had to shoot vampires through the heart with a I guess with a solid silver-headed arrow. It was like a weird take on Crossbow. And a lot of arcades wouldn't put it on the floor because it was considered very graphic and evil for the time. Now, of course, it's a complete joke, right? Where 12-year-olds are watching Vivisection on Netflix. Yeah, you remember Chiller? Someone remembers Chiller. I salute you. Does anyone remember Robotron? Chiller? Man, I was like in high school when these games were coming out. Middle school and high school. My video gaming was really like grade school and middle school. By the time I hit high school, as soon as access to women became a thing, I just didn't have the time to go to the arcade, which is kind of, yeah, Tron. Tron was an all-time classic. So was the original Atari Star Wars. One of my favorites. I think that was 1978. Vector. It was all vector graphics. Fucking beautiful. Very, very expensive to obtain an original Atari Star Wars from 79. But if you have one, I would recommend refitting the vector graphics monitor. Otherwise, it will eventually, due to age, it will catch fire, and the whole thing will be toast. Pac-Man, yeah, we all remember Pac-Man. Death Race 2000. Galaxian, I have a, Galaxian. That was a good one. Spy Hunter. Yeah, Spy Hunter, I used to like the music. Dun, 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 the Peter Gunn theme, but as a game, it seemed kind of lame. Running over pedestrians, yeah. Miss Pac-Man. I think what I'm going to probably end up doing is building what they call a MAME machine. It's a single, full-size arcade machine, but inside, you can put like every video game ever created, back from the day. And you have a giant set of controls so that depending on the game, certain controls light up. So any type of game, except the really interesting ones like Crossbow or Chiller, which had an interesting human interface that looked like a crossbow, unless it was like, if it was a standard game that had like 3 or 4 buttons plus a 1 or 2 player button, what most video games, arcade games, it was like left, right, sometimes up, down, fire, and possibly some kind of hyperspace or, Joker's Wild button. And then the 1 or 2 player. That's basically the majority of arcade games, unless it was something unique like Battlezone, which had the actual, those joysticks, or Chiller, or Crossbow, which had a giant crossbow that you moved around. Dragon's Lair was the first Laserdisc based video game. It was beautiful. I remember when that shit hit the arcade around, I guess that must have been around 84. It was probably around 84 or 85. It looked like a beautiful movie quality cartoon, but the gameplay was terrible because it had a Laserdisc inside. It was just basically playing different animated clips. It was one of those things that if you played it now, well, you sucked at Dragon's Lair because the game actually sucked. It was very hard to play. That's why, in your mind, you probably remember it as being a lot better than if you played it today. Tron, the video game, however, was amazing. They were going to make 3 or 4 games based off the Tron movie, but they only ended up making 1. It was like an abridged thing, but still, it was the beauty of the execution was something. Star Castle, fucking amazing. Another vector graphics classic. Vector graphics was the old style monitor. as opposed to composite, which is what we use. Now we're using LED, LCD, but composite was like regular television, and vector was a very special type of monitor, very bright and colorful, but very almost like architectural drawing. That's why if you remember games like Tempest and Battlezone and Star Castle, and I'm trying to think of other vector graphics games out there, Asteroids, and not Space Invaders, interestingly enough. These games, if you still have them, you need to sort of revamp the mechanics, because vector monitors, the funny thing was, these games were here's a little secret, guys. All of those games that were made in the 80s and the 70s for arcades were not designed to work for more than 2 or 3 years. They were made as a consumable product that would be thrown away. It never occurred to anybody, nobody. I talked to one of the guys who founded a company called Konami. It's a Japanese company. This was 20 years ago. And I told him that I had recently acquired a Atari Battlezone, and I was in the process of revamping it, swapping out parts, fixing it up to make it new again. And he was laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? He goes, when we made those things, especially in my market, the Japanese market, like a pachinko machine, the life of a pachinko machine is like it's like in Vegas, those one-armed bandit machines. The life of those things is only a couple years, and then they will sell it to some lesser market, or they'll remove the coin-op function and sell it directly to the public, in an auction or something like that. And it was insane to him that 30-plus years later, people were paying thousands of dollars on eBay for these full-size machines, and then lovingly rebuilding the monitor, rebuilding the thing so that it could last 100 years. And the same with pinball machines. And so now you notice with all this stuff that they make now, practically nothing in our society is looked at as we're going to, unless it's a consumer thing, unless it's like your laptop. Unless it's your laptop or anything that you put in your house, anything that's commercial, the idea is that, especially something like that has Star Trek or Star Wars or The Witcher. This show, The Witcher, that was a video game series for years. So no one really knows that, but I'm sure Manny knows that. He recommended one of the games. It's like, oh yeah, I know The Witcher, if you're into that stuff. But I'm telling you guys, all of these video games, the few that they're still making for the arcade, when they're making those things now, they're not thinking it's going to be thrown away in 3 years. They're thinking this thing will probably have a life. Some guy in 30 or 40 years is going to pay $100,000 adjusted for inflation to put it into his house, because this is what he played when he was 12. This is what he played when he was 12. And when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I went through my nostalgia phase for the 80s, and I had pretty much unlimited money at that time in my life. I wasn't married, and I didn't give a fuck. So I was on eBay. I was buying anything I wanted, all of these old video games, and then I realized some of them would literally catch on fire if I used them too much, because the vector graphics monitor was not designed to last a long time. So they needed to be completely rebuilt, and some of it I could do and most of it I could not. So I had to find someone who had some serious electronics skills under his belt. Anyway, why am I talking about this? I don't know. Nostalgia is very powerful. I'm trying to resist it as I'm getting older. And I suspect the person who was talking about that game, the Dragon's Lair, that if you played it today, you wouldn't think it's any good. Because the games now are so sophisticated and amazing that the old Laserdisc thing that they were doing was a novelty. The gameplay itself sucked ass. But with the eyes of someone in 1983 or 84, it was like the future. Because compared to the graphics of Space Invaders or Defender, it was like you're looking at a real movie. But the video, if you watch DeFango's channel, I think Danger Zone is the channel he's doing a lot of activity on now on YouTube. If you watch the games he's playing, we could only dream in our wildest fantasy to have that kind of game in the 80s or the 70s. And so I'm very happy with how things have evolved. I would say that if you're a gamer, this is the golden age of gaming. As much as younger guys say, oh, I wish I was there in the 80s. And I get that. I do. It's like, meeting somebody who got to see Led Zeppelin live, right? Or Pink Floyd back in 1975 or 76. This, like, I got to see Kraftwerk in the early 80s, Computer World. So, I mean, these are things, it's like legendary status type of things you can do in our little subculture. But I would never want to go back to the 80s, at least not from a technology standpoint. I'd like to go back in certain other things. I think as a society, we were more together. And the World War II generation was far superior to any of us. And they're gone now. And I think our country is hurting because of it. We're not up to this. We're not up to that same standard. But our games are a million times better. And as much as you want to, if you never experienced it first time around, you want to romanticize the early TRS-80, Apple II, Commodore 64 days, or even the Atari. Remember the Atari? We can romanticize it, but those games were primitive. They were like the most expensive games are basically what you're playing on your cell phone now, that are free or cost you 99 cents, right? If you've played games like Call of Duty or Hitman, I'm just thinking some of the games that I've played recently. That's pretty much all I play. Doom Eternal. You can't even compare, man. You look at Doom Eternal and some of this VR technology that's out, that's, you can't compare it. You can't compare it. It's not like cars. The cars today are very technologically advanced, but I don't think they lack the power. You get like one of those 1963 or 1964 American giant ass Chevrolet or Buicks. When you press down on the gas pedal, you felt the power. And I own a very expensive, probably the biggest thing you can get is an American vehicle. I own a Chevy Suburban LTZ, top of the line. It's what the FBI, this is why I got it. I figured it's good enough for the feds. It's good enough for NYPD. It's good enough for me. Built like a tank. But when you press that gas pedal down, it's okay. Compared to the rice rockets most people are driving, it's okay. Unfortunately, I remember what those muscle cars from the 60s and 70s, before the American cars started being shitty. And I know there's a lot of older people that watch our streams, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Right? When you push down the gas pedal in like a 1971 or 72 American-made tank car that got, if you were lucky, 10 miles to the gallon. The Hemi, exactly, Butterfly. Now you're talking, baby. AMC, Hemi. The Hemi, talking about the height of 60s technology, automotive technology. You take a younger guy, you put him in the behind the steering wheel of one of these real 60s muscle cars, and I think you would get a revolution. They would storm Washington, wanting to burn down the White House when they realize what they've been robbed of. What we have been robbed of. There's no way to describe. You can't. The hardest thing in business is to try to convince someone the money they could be making, but they're not. It's literally the most difficult thing you can do. And trying to convince young guys of all the things that have been taken from them by feminists and other types of leftists. and over-regulation and political correctness. All of this stuff was stolen from you. Your birthright was stolen from you. But I remember it. I remember what it was like to drive a 19... What the fuck was my dad driving? I think it was a 1969 Mercedes-Benz. Unfucking real when you would drive that thing around. I'm not saying the Mercedes and BMWs now suck. They don't. They definitely don't. But when it comes to American cars, too much computerization for my taste. Too much aerodynamics and tricks that they're playing with the fuel line to make it fall into these various cafes. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but they have all these regulations. You can't make a real car anymore. Can't make a real car anymore because it's illegal to do so. So that's what guys like me, when you're in your 50s, you start thinking, maybe I should go buy like a 19... Like I'm thinking, like my friend Paul, before he died, was in the process of buying a 19... I think he wanted a Porsche Carrera. And he wanted to restore it. And that's a beautiful car, but I think I would go American, right? I mean, those that's a classic car, Herr Dr. Porsche. But I'm thinking Hemi. I'm thinking total body restoration, black on black, like blackout. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Like I dress all in black, black interior, black exterior. Upgrade the dash to some Blade Runner digital dash on like a 70-year-old car. You tell me that's not the dream, my friend. Tell me. Oh, your brother does that, Carol? I got to give him a call. Yeah, that's your dream car too, right? I'm talking about driving around that motherfucker, building a safe in there too. I mean, come on. That's New York City guns for you. That's New York City guns. I drive a Suburban also is New York City guns, but it's like the attitude of a cop. Where's the romance in driving a car that the FBI drives? Not much. But it's very functional. But I'd much rather have like a 1967, 1966, something American. There's so many great ones. So many great companies back then. Buick. We've been talking on DM, a couple of people, we've been talking about the Cordoba, with those commercials by Mr. Rourke. I mean Khan, Noonien Singh, what's his real name? Ricardo Montalban. Was pushing, it was like a poor man's Lincoln Continental in the mid-70s. And you had like Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island going on and on about the rich Corinthian leather. I think it was leatherette. I don't know. I know one of the people in our neighborhood bought one, and everyone thought it'd be the best thing because we all saw the commercials. And when I actually sat in it, I was a kid. I remember telling my mom, it kind of sucks. The Cordoba. Monte Carlo, yes. 73, 75. Those are the sweet spot years. I'd say like 1965 to 1973. That was the golden age of American cars. Yeah, Big Fish. You remember that shit? That Cordoba? It was total garbage, man. It was total garbage, man. 69 black and gold Chevelle. Now you're talking. How about a Pacer with custom pinstripes? Yeah, how about having to sell Cisco products for the next 5 years? Not on my watch, kids. Not on my watch. Next thing you know, you're going to want to have a Duster. Yeah, you drive your Pacer, and I'll get one of them shit brown Dusters, and we'll race it and see which one falls apart first. We'll see which one falls apart first. My money's on the Duster. Terrible car. Absolutely awful. See, big fish. We drove a Pacer to spring break, broke down. You see what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. What I'm saying. Fuck that. BW bus. Now that's awesome. See, the BW bus was pretty gay. I'm just going to be honest with you. In the 70s, that was some hippie motherfucking shit. But it was these were great. They're very iconic. And if I could get one, I would restore it and make it really awesome. Like I would gut the inside and make it like I'd pimp it out completely. Probably put like a video game room in there, or maybe a movie theater or something, some refrigerator, because it's a that's really, to me, that's the 70s. The VW Bug is more like the 50s and the 60s, but that what do they call it? The Love Van or whatever the fuck the VW van was, the VW bus. Yeah. I have such strong memories of those in the 70s, driving around in those in the 70s. Be kind of fun to have one. And I know VW tried to make another one in the 90s, but they were shit. They tried to make like a 90s one that looked like it was an 80s design, and it was garbage. And people don't realize, you know, keep it real. You got to keep it real. Gremlin. No. Don't even joke about that fucking car. The AMC Gremlin may be the worst car ever produced by American car manufacturers. I mean, there's some that you could credibly say, well, they are just as bad, maybe a tad worse, like the Pinto, the Ford Fiesta. I mean, these are really awful cars. But I've got to say, pound for pound, I think the AMC Gremlin will win. For no other reason than its incredibly high rate of failure within the first year of ownership. It was like some insane amount of failures. So, yeah. Yeah, Gremlin, terrible, awful car. Absolutely awful. There you go, 64 Pontiac Catalina. It did take decades for the automakers. Lee Iacocca actually was instrumental in that in the 80s. But people forgot how amazing American cars were, and then the gas crisis, energy shortages in the 70s, they started making cars no one wanted to buy that also, remarkably, were terrible. So not only did no one want them, they actually mechanically sucked ass as well. And so I would say by the late 70s, mid to late 70s, nobody wanted to buy American anymore. Toyota was taken over. Toyota, by the late 70s, early 80s, was taken over. By the late 80s, early 90s, Honda came into play. So, yeah, we really screwed ourselves bad. That was the CAFE standards and other regulations that were put into place by the government. Really screwed us. Yeah, Jimmy Carter, man. I remember it. I remember it all. Yugo. Yeah, but thank God that was a Yugoslavian thing. You can't blame America for the Yugo. So don't try. Don't try to do that. You got that right. American Silog got that right. American cars instantly turned to junk after the embargo. Abso-fucking-lutely. And then the Japanese owned us for a good 10 years. But we made our comeback in the 90s. But we were lost for about 10 or 15 years, American cars. Oh, the Datsun. Yeah, the Yugo, God. I think the only American car people were buying in the 80s that I remember was the Jeep. I'm trying to think. Jeep, What other American cars were people buying? I mean, people that, that weren't just buying shitty cars. Because you have people that have no taste and are dumb that are always going to buy shitty stuff, right? But I'm saying that other than morons, what were people buying car-wise in the 80s? I seem to remember a lot of Japanese stuff. Toyota and Honda was everywhere. It's hard to remember exactly. But the Chevette, yeah, Subaru, right. The American cars in the 80s were not good. That's why, they were, so you had like, trying to think, like Buick, what was it, the Skylark? Was it, or the Fifth Avenue? I'm trying to remember what some of these 80s American cars, and they all looked like 70s cars, except that they wouldn't put any of the fake wood paneling on them because it's too expensive. So they left the boxiness, but they tried to make it look like a Japanese car. It was just awful. And the colors they came in were all these Japanese colors, which are terrible. And they all were garbage after 5 or 6 years. My dad had a what did he get? A Ford Fairmont station wagon, which wasn't, it wasn't bad. I'm not going to say it was bad, but it wasn't good. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. Yeah. I don't know if anyone remembers the Ford Fairmont. Yeah. You had a Fairmont Silog? It had, don't you think, of all the cars you've sat in, the Ford Fairmont had the most unique dashboard for the heating and air conditioning system. I have never seen one like it since. And I had never seen one like it at the time. His was a metallic blue. And it was when we first got it in 79 or 78, whatever, it looked real nice. But by the 80s it just wasn't happening, man. It wasn't happening. And of course I inherited it. Of course I inherited it to learn how to drive in. And which actually kind of worked out because it was such a shitty car that if you could drive halfway decently a Ford Fairmont, you could be an amazing driver in a real car, as I found out later. But I'm not going to hit. Yeah, Mazda. Right. That's what I remember in the 80s, man. A lot of Toyota, a lot of Honda, Mazda, Subaru, and the American cars were there, but they were like throwaway cars. People would buy them, and like 3 or 4 years later, they'd have to replace them. Except for the Jeeps. Jeep was big. You totaled your cars? Yeah. Yep, that's what happens, man. I totaled a Honda once when I was, I guess, fresh out of high school. I fell asleep and hit the guardrail, and the Honda literally fell into like 16,000 pieces. It was pathetic, and that's why I've never driven a Japanese car since. Yeah, I hear you. In Detroit, Japanese cars. Buick Regal Grand National. That's it. 1987, ugly fucking car is the Buick Regal Grand National by my standards, but those things still had a little bit of torque to them. You hit the gas pedal, you felt it. And the engine didn't sound like modern engines where it sounds like 2 gears. One gear is like, and the other gear is There's really like nothing in between. Yeah, but those 70s and 80s American cars, when you fully opened up the engine, it was like, you really felt like you were in an airplane. That was something. All right, guys. So we will be back Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Adam Gingrich to go through what's been going on. So until then, I wish you all the best. And remember, stay safe and be well.